Chapter 638. The medical saint had left so many seeds, which solved Jun Changxiao's problem of lacking herbs. It also made him give up the idea of collecting resources outside and focus on developing the sect. The 3-year agreement was approaching. He also began to think about how to bring his disciples to challenge the Lily Holy Sect in the strongest state. Jun Patriarch had fought with a 4th-rate sect before, but he had never fought with a 3rd-rate sect. Now that he was challenging a 2nd-rate sect, it was undoubtedly a bit valiant. Of course. Challenging the 2nd-rate Lily Holy Sect was an opportunity to increase the sect's prestige. If it was someone else, they would definitely not dare to do it. Jun Changxiao dared to do it, because the sect would eventually become the strongest, and it was inevitable to step on a higher sect. Master. Evil Saint Wu Jue walked into the main hall and couldn't help but ask, is this really a 5th-rate sect? He had been in the sect for 2 days and witnessed many martial king-level disciples sparring on the martial arts field. He was greatly shocked. It was already very impressive for a 5th-rate sect to have 2 martial kings. But this sect of all times actually had dozens of them, and they were all disciples. Evil Saint Wu Jue would believe it even if it was a 2nd-rate sect. Of course. Jun Changxiao said, I just advanced not long ago. Evil Saint Wu Jue's mouth twitched, and he finally understood why Ge Qingming wanted to join the sect of all times. This kind of sect with martial kings everywhere must have limitless potential. After Elder Gu took the body-shaping pill and spirit-tempering pill, he was also very excited. 10,000 spirit stones to enter the sect of all times. It was not a loss. It was definitely not a loss. Outside. The news about the natural phenomenon of the southern desolate state and the appearance of the supreme treasure was actually the medical saint's tomb spread widely. The death of a divine doctor caused many martial artists to feel pity in their hearts. Because this phenomenon had nothing to do with martial arts, the discussion gradually calmed down. Jun Changxiao was relieved. At least it didn't cause too much of a stir, and he shouldn't be targeted by thieves. In fact, in the medical saint's tomb, only the tranquil heart lotus had a good effect. The medicinal herbs and medical books were really not attractive to martial artists. The disciples of the sect of all times were still working hard to cultivate. Evil Saint Wu Jue also began to be responsible for teaching Yao Menjiang, and he also trained Mo Shang. However, he was still an evil cultivator. He could only give some pointers on martial arts experience, but he couldn't really nurture them in all aspects. After all, it was Wu Sheng from the evil sect. Elder Wei and the members of the medicine hall were actively planting medicinal herbs to provide the sect with martial resources that could help them become stronger. Shui Rengui and Tao Yuan had been discussing military matters together, as well as training wolf riders. The busiest one was Li Luoqiu. Not only did he have to develop intelligence, but he also had to manage the procurement hall. On the contrary, the position in the discipline hall was the most idle. This was because the disciples put their minds on cultivation, and no one would violate the rules. 1 month later. Under Li Qingyang's leadership, the sect was expanded and became even more majestic than before. Moreover, this time, he had redefined the inner yard. The inner sect, outer sect, and inner sect disciples were separated into independent areas with corresponding martial arts facilities. Not bad, not bad. After Jun Changxiao's inspection, he fully approved of Li Qingyang's work. The Ning brothers were in charge of recruiting disciples. During the 3rd sect opening ceremony, they recruited a few hundred disciples after strict tests, and the talent pool was increasing. The sect operated normally. Jun Changxiao lived a carefree life. Occasionally, he would take fishing equipment to the pond to pass the time. In half a year, I will challenge the Lily Holy Sect. On this day, Jun Changxiao sat by the pond, waiting for the fish to take the bait. He thought to himself, can she come back? She? Lu Qianshan. Challenging a 2nd-rate sect was very important. Jun Changxiao hoped that this eldest disciple of the sect could go with him. The main reason was that the Lily Holy Sect was mainly female. Lu Qianshan was extremely beautiful. If he brought her to challenge, she would definitely be able to suppress them in terms of looks. Patriarch Li Qingyang said, City Lord Mu is here to visit. Why is he here again? Jun Changshao was surprised. In the few months since Mu Honglian joined the sect, Mu Changhong had come to visit the sect of all times no less than 3 times. He could be said to be extremely diligent. How could he not be diligent? She saw him as the most ideal son-in-law. Invite him in. In the main hall, Mu Changhong had just sat down. He did not ask about his daughter as usual. Instead, he frowned and said, Jun Patriarch, I heard that your sect and the Lily Holy Sect have a dual agreement. How did City Lord Mu know? Jun Changshao was very surprised. Mu Changhong said, 2 days ago, I went out to attend a meeting and heard about it from the City Lord of the Eastern Vast State's Imperial City. The Lily Holy Sect was located in the Eastern Vast State. Although this state was not the largest, its overall strength was only second to the Central State. That's right. Jun Changshao said, there is such a thing. Mu Changhong's expression became interesting. He said, the Lily Holy Sect is one of the top sects in the Starfall continent. It seems a bit early for Jun Patriarch to challenge such a colossus. He recognized the potential of the sect of all times very much. He also believed that if they slowly developed, they would definitely have the strength to compete with second-rate sections. However, it was a bit too hasty to challenge them now. It's not early. Jun Changshao said, it's just right. The overall strength of the sect of all times was not as good as second-rate sects, but they were still confident in sparring with their elite disciples. In my opinion, Mu Changhong said seriously, it's better to cancel the agreement and challenge them when you have enough strength in the future. The sect of all times was currently on the rise. If they lost to a second-rate sect, it would definitely affect their morale. City Lord Mu. Jun Changshao said, a gentleman's word cannot be taken back. He could not let the sect use second-rate sects to establish prestige, but Xiao Ziji must take back what he lost. Not to mention Mu Changhong, even the Heavenly King would not dissuade him. The 3-year agreement must be fought. Sigh. Mu Changhong sighed and said, in that case, I can only wish Jun Patriarch success. He also hoped that Jun Changshao would defeat the Lily Holy Sect and show the might of Southwest Yangzhou. However, the difference in strength between the 2 sects was too great. Jun Changshao expressed his understanding. When he challenged the Holy Spring Sect, who would have believed that a disciple could win more than 70 matches in a row? Any explanation would be pale and powerless. Just fight and be done with it. Mu Changhong changed the topic and said, how is Honglian's cultivation recently? She has broken through to the peak of Wuzong. Jun Changshao said. Mu Changhong said in surprise, so fast? Not fast. If there was a Martial King pill, your daughter would break through to the Martial King realm in minutes. Jun Changshao said, the princess is extraordinarily talented, and with my guidance, it is reasonable for her to improve so quickly. Ha ha ha. Mu Changhong laughed and said, Honglian can be taught by Jun Patriarch. It can be considered an opportunity. By the way. He leaned over and said seriously, Jun Patriarch is not young anymore. Have you thought about your marriage? This, Jun Changshao shook his head and said, Jun is now focused on the sect. He has not thought about love for the time being. Mu Changhong said, a good man has ambitions. He cannot be misled by love. He admired Jun Changshao more and more. With such achievements at this age, many people could not keep their hearts and were addicted to romance. Back then, a genius with good aptitude appeared in the royal city. All the warriors in the city had high hopes for him, thinking that he would at least be a martial king in the future. It was a pity that he was not chaste. He spent all his time indulging in luxury and neglected his cultivation. At the age of 20, he had a group of wives and concubines. In the end, his body was emptied and he missed the opportunity to cultivate. Jun Patriarch. Mu Changhong said, a man should focus on his career, but not too much. When the sect stabilizes in the future, he has to consider his marriage. After all, there are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. Let's talk about the future in the future. Jun Changshao said. Chapter 639. Mu Changhong knew that the sect of all times was challenging the Lily Sacred Sect. The cultivators outside also heard about it. For a moment, many people were discussing it. The Lily Sacred Sect has been in the continent for thousands of years. Isn't the sect of all times seeking death by challenging such a huge force? I heard that it was because of Xiao Ziji and Murong Xian from Sky Sea City. I also heard about this. That year, that girl called Murong Xian brought people to the Xiao clan to break off the engagement. The Murong clan of Sky Sea City is quite strong. In my opinion, the sect of all times might not even be able to deal with this clan. How would they dare to challenge the Lily Sacred Sect? The 3-year promise was widely spread in the continent and had become a topic that many cultivators had to discuss. Even the city lord of southwest Yangzhou Imperial City did not think highly of it, let alone outsiders. In short, many cultivators knew that the sect of all times was going to challenge a second-rate sect soon. Their first reaction was that that guy had lost his mind because of being famous. The Murong clan had also heard about the sect of all times challenging the Lily Sacred Sect. In the hall, the Murong clan's patriarch was discussing this matter with a few elders. An elder frowned and said, I didn't expect that the sect that kid from the Xiao clan joined would become famous in the continent in such a short time. The Murong clan had already received news that Xiao Ziji had won the Azure Sun County tournament. They also knew that he had joined a sect called the Iron Bones Sect and was reborn. But who would have thought that in just 2 years, a sect that was completely treated as air would become a sect and even have the strength to fight against a 4th-rate sect? Not to mention the Murong clan. All the cultivators in the continent did not expect this. The sect of all times' rise was simply too fast. That feeling was as if the whole world knew about this sect after they woke up, even though they had never heard of it before they went to bed. An elder sneered and said, Xian Air is a genius that the Lily Sacred Sect has focused on nurturing. That kid from the Xiao clan will not be able to win even if he recovers his cultivation. Many people are talking about the engagement that year, saying that our Murong clan went overboard. Although Xian was the one who took the initiative to annul the engagement without discussing it with us, Xiao Ziji's realm and cultivation are both gone. It's only right that she annuls the engagement. The elders of the Murong family did not think that Murong Xian had done anything wrong by breaking off the engagement. This matter is already in the past. There's no need to discuss it anymore. The master of the Murong clan said, Tell those disobedient direct descendants of the clan that the 3-year promise is a matter between the sect of all times and the Lily Holy Sect. Our Murong clan should not participate. Patriarch. An elder said, Shaolin and the others left for the sect of all times yesterday. What? The master of the Murong family stood up and said angrily, Why didn't you stop him? That elder said, Patriarch, in my opinion, the sect of all times is just too mysterious. Let Shaolin and the others try and see if they have the qualifications to challenge Xian Air. Nonsense. The Murong clan master said with a dark expression, The extreme cold palace was almost destroyed by the sect of all times. If these direct descendants go there, they will only be taught a lesson. No, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and chase them back. Yes. They could not catch up. Because just as the higher-ups of the Murong family were discussing, a few well-dressed young masters appeared at the foot of the Iron Bone Mountain. A man looked at the mountain that was surrounded by spiritual energy and said with disdain, Brother Shaolin, the sect of all times actually dares to support Xiao Ziji and bring him to the Lily Holy Sect to challenge our cousin. They were all direct descendants of the 3rd generation of the Murong family. The leader was called Murong Shaolin. In terms of talent, he was second only to Murong Xian. He was one of the best among the new geniuses of the Murong family. Today, we will test for our cousin to see if that brat has the qualifications. These young masters who rarely went out were extremely arrogant. They were especially unhappy with the 3-year promise between Xiao Ziji and Murong Xian, so they came to stand up for their cousin. Not to mention, recently, the Sect of all times was in the limelight, so they also wanted to come and fight. What was young and frivolous? This was it. Oh, no, it was more accurate to say that they were too spoiled at home and had become retarded. Come and challenge the Sect of all times. Go and ask the disciples of the fourth-rate sects who were similar in strength to the extreme cold palace if they had the courage to come. Xiao Meng. Murong Shaolin said indifferently, tell them why we are here. Okay. Murong Xiaomeng, who had a rough appearance, shouted loudly, Jun Chongxiao, the people of the Murong family have come to challenge you. Quickly come out and receive them. HM. The disciples who were playing football all stopped when they heard the shout. Li Fei said angrily, who has the guts to say the name of our patriarch? Su Xiaoma released his spiritual sense and quickly locked onto the foot of the mountain, on the group of young masters who deserved a beating. Hua Ling said in surprise, these people seem to be direct descendants of the Murong family of the Sky Sea City. It's them. Chu Xiaonan said indifferently, back then, they came to the school to discuss martial arts. The guy who shouted at the top of his lungs was beaten up by me. The mouths of Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, and the others twitched. They couldn't even beat Chu Xiaonan, yet they dared to challenge the Sect of all times. Were they not asking to be slapped in the face? Little Mo Jun Chongxiao said, let them come up. Elder Wei said, Patriarch, they should have heard that Xiao Ziji and Murong Xian have a 3-year agreement. Jun Chongxiao touched his nose and said, does the Murong family think that we are easy to bully? They didn't even send an elder and sent a bunch of immature people to challenge us. Elder Wei was silent. Patriarch, you and your disciples don't seem to be that old. Not long after, Murong Shaolin and 8 other direct descendants of the Murong family were brought in. Thousands of disciples of the Sect of all times stood near the training field and locked onto the direct descendants of the Murong family. However, the direct descendants of the Murong family didn't think much of it. It was said that the Sect of all times was very strong, but they didn't expect that there would be rookies at the martial disciple level. Everyone. Li Qingyang walked out of the hall and cupped his hands, our Sect of all times will accept your challenge. Jun Chongxiao naturally wouldn't step in when the 3rd generation of direct descendants of the family came to challenge him. He would leave everything to his 2nd disciple. However, he also gave the order. Beat this group of people who came to challenge him until they pissed their pants. Murong Shaolin cupped his hands and said, I heard that your sect's disciple Xiao Ziji wants to challenge my cousin Murong Xian. Tell him to come out and I will fight with him. Sorry. Li Qingyang said, junior brother Xiao is currently cultivating in seclusion and can't accept the challenge. If you want to fight. After pausing for a moment, he pointed at the martial arts practice field and said, you can choose anyone to fight with. Murong Shaolin frowned. Although there were many disciples in the Sect of all times, the strongest aura they emitted was only at the martial master level. There was even a 6 or 7-year-old girl. Were they looking down on him? Since Xiao Ziji can't fight, I can only find an inner disciple. Murong Shaolin said indifferently. If he wanted to fight, he would fight an inner disciple of the sect. Even if he won, he would feel a sense of accomplishment. Li Qingyang shook his head and said, you are too weak. You don't have the qualifications to challenge an inner disciple. You can only choose from the outer disciple or the inner disciple. Inner disciple? He actually wanted him to challenge a disciple who had just entered the sect. Brother Shaolin. A direct descendant said angrily, the Sect of all times is looking down on us too much. Murong Shaolin clenched his fists and said with a cold gaze, we didn't come here to bully rookies. We only want to challenge inner disciples with decent strength. Rookie? Li Qingyang said loudly, junior brothers and sisters, show your aura. Let the guests from afar see who is the rookie. Who in an instant, everyone no longer relied on the hidden cultivation technique to suppress their aura. Nearly 10,000 disciples released their aura, forming a huge wave of qi. It shocked the few direct descendants of the Murong family so much that they retreated. Some of them even lost their balance and fell to the ground. Chapter 640. The overall strength of the Murong family in Tianhai City was not bad, and the direct descendants were also okay. For example, those who came to challenge were at least at the level of Wuzong. But the disciples of the sect of all times released their cultivation, forming an oppressive feeling that immediately crushed their sense of existence. Murong Shaolin was stunned. Any of the disciples of the sect of all time standing in front of him was stronger than him in terms of aura and momentum. Impossible. How could it be? The direct descendants of the Murong family, who were at a lower level, were also shocked. Their previous arrogance completely disappeared after the disciples of the sect of all times released their cultivation. Who was the rookie? There was no need to explain at this time. Everyone. Li Qingyang said, pick anyone, the sect of all times does not reject anyone. What a stable man who could see the big picture. After being with Jun Changshao for a long time, he began to become arrogant and domineering. Humans. They would change eventually. Moreover, a group of idiots came to challenge the sect and even called the patriarch by his name. As the second senior brother, he was also angry. Brother Shaolin. Fear appeared in Murong Shaolin's eyes. He said, What should we do? The aura released by the disciples of the sect of all times scared him and the other direct descendants to the point that they did not have the courage to challenge. We underestimated this sect. Murong Shaolin did not expect the disciples of the sect of all times to be so strong. But since they came, they certainly could not back down. They had to bite the bullet. Shaolin, you challenge first. Ha! Hurry up. Murong Shaolin listened to his cousin. Even if he knew that he might be abused, he still stood up with difficulty. Who should he choose? This was a big problem. At this time, Murong Shaolin saw Chu Xiaonan. When he went to the Heavenly Mandate Academy, this guy had beaten him up. New and old hatred were ignited all at once. Chu Xiaonan. He gritted his teeth and said, I want to challenge you. Junior brother Chu, Li Qingyang said, come on. Stomp. Chu Xiaonan stood in the martial arts arena and said with disdain, loser, you still dare to challenge me? Murong Shaolin walked up and rushed over with heavy footsteps. He said angrily, I am not the same person 3 years ago. Whoosh, the psionic power around him trembled and gathered in his fists. Judging from his heavy aura, this person must have paid more attention to the cultivation of the fleshly body. Get out of here. Chu Xiaonan rose from the ground and abruptly swept a leg over. It was a very plain attack, but it contained extremely powerful spirit energy, and it slammed into Murong Xiaoming's face as he approached. Bang! Murong Shaolin, the world Chu Xiaonan strode over and directly rode on Murong Xiaoming's body. He raised his fists and madly ravaged him. The sect leader had said that he had to torture them until they pissed themselves in their pants. Bang! Bang! Under the crazy bombardment, Murong Xiaoming was beaten black and blue. In the end, he was sent flying with a kick and crashed into the outer wall. So weak, Su Xiaoma and the others shook their heads. The Murong family's direct descendant opened his eyes wide. Back then, Shaolin could exchange a few dozen moves with this guy. How could he be defeated in seconds? Chu Xiaonan said indifferently, I am not the same person 3 years ago. If he followed the school's cultivation, he could defeat Murong Shaolin, but it would not be so clean. Li Qingyang said indifferently, continue. Murong Shaolin clenched his fists and said, Shaolin, you fight. The descendant called Murong Shaolin walked out with a dejected face. He looked at the sect of all time's disciples and finally fixed his eyes on Yao Menjing. I want to challenge her. Murong Shaolin almost spat out blood. This scoundrel actually chose the youngest female generation. He's really throwing away my Murong family's face. Murong Shaolin did not have the courage to challenge a sect of all time's disciple of the same age as him. He could only choose someone who was easier to bully. Challenging our junior sister? Is this the descendant of the Murong family in Sky Sea City? What a respectable person. Bah! The Sect of All Time's disciples looked at him with disdain. Junior sister. Li Qingyang said, fight. N. Yao Menjing walked out with light steps. Junior sister, you are the best. Junior sister, beat this shameless guy until his mother can't recognize him. The senior brother behind her cheered for her. In the main hall, Jun Changshao rested his chin on one hand and said with interest, after cultivating for so long, it is time for real combat. Elder Wei said worriedly, Patriarch, she is a demonic cultivator. If she is exposed, there will be trouble. Jun Changshao said disapprovingly, taking care of these cats and dogs will definitely not make the little girl use her true strength. That is true. Elder Wei relaxed. If Murong Shaolin heard their conversation, he would definitely explode in anger. Am I so weak that you think I can't beat a 6 or 7-year-old girl? Yes. I am really weak. Because when the fight started, Yao Menjing used cloud-treading steps and gently waved her hand in the air. The seemingly soft attack contained great power. Boom! Murong Shaolin crashed into the outer wall and fainted beside Murong Xiaomeng. The Murong family's descendants all widened their eyes. Losing to Chu Xiaonan was understandable. After all, the other party was a descendant of the Chu family in southwest Yangzhou Imperial City. But being instantly defeated by a little girl was too terrifying. I admit it. Yao Menjing cupped her hands and looked like a woman who was not inferior to men. Junior sister is mighty. Junior sister is mighty. The disciples cheered. Li Qingyang said, everyone, time is limited. Please continue to challenge. Damn it. Murong Shaolin gritted his teeth. He naturally would not admit defeat and ordered others to fight. Bang! 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 In a short time, several Murong family members forced themselves to choose opponents and were sent flying one by one. They fainted together with the first two cousins. The courage to challenge the Sect of All Times was commendable. 7 of his cousins were defeated and fainted. Only Murong Shaolin was left. Please choose, Li Qingyang said calmly. Murong Shaolin was in despair. But now, he had to fight no matter what. I'll fight with him. Yi Xingchen walked out from the crowd. Junior brother Yi, forget it. Li Qingyang was afraid that if he fought, he would torture the other party until he was better off dead. He would be traumatized and fear of martial arts. Okay. Murong Shaolin said, I choose him. As soon as he said that, Su Xiaoma and the others cupped their hands and said, I respect you for being a man. Boom! 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 The ground kept shaking, and the grains of sand on it bounced up, as if fairies were dancing. Li Qingyang, Su Xiaoma, and the others' mouths twitched violently. In the end, they could not bear to watch and turned their heads away. It was too brutal and bloody. Boom! On the training field, Yi Xingchen finally stopped after throwing a punch. Below him, Murong Shaolin was bruised all over. His head was swollen like a pig's. The worst thing was that he had not fainted yet. He was still experiencing the heart-wrenching pain that came from every inch of his skin. This feeling was worse than death. Qingyang. Jun Changshao said calmly, lock them all up. Are you here to challenge the Sect of All Times? I'll welcome you at any time. But once you're here, it won't be so easy for you to leave. Yes. Li Qingyang hurriedly led his men to lock up Murong Shaolin. The Supreme Elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace, who was sweeping the ground in the distance, had a bitter look in his eyes. Previously, he was also carried away by them like this. Hall Master Li Jun Changshao said, send a letter to the Murong clan in Sky Sea City. Ask them to prepare 200,000 spirit stones for the ransom. Chapter 641. That afternoon, the Murong family received a letter from the Sect of All Times. The content was, your family's 8 direct descendants have failed the challenge to the Sect of all times and have been reduced to prisoners. Please prepare 200,000 spirit stones and come to redeem them within 5 days. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. This was similar to a kidnapper calling for ransom and killing the hostage if they did not cooperate. Only Jun Changshao would do this. Because the other righteous sects would definitely care about their face. Needless to say, the Sect of all times' style of immediately taking revenge on whoever offended them was not a righteous sect, but more like an evil sect. But it was not appropriate to call it an evil sect. When Zhenyang County invaded, all of them went out to defend Qingyang City and prevent the people from being baptized by the flames of war. This was something that evil sects would find difficult to do. Therefore, the outside world's definition of the Sect of all times was between good and evil. Jun Changshao did not care about good or evil, he only wanted to do as he pleased. Pa! The Mu Rong family's patriarch slammed his palm on the table and said angrily, a group of bastards who can't do anything right. 200,000 spirit stones. For a family, this was definitely a large number. The great elder said angrily, the direct descendants went to challenge, even if they lost, they should not be detained. The Sect of all times is clearly trying to extort us. This is intolerable. The second elder stood up and gritted his teeth, Patriarch, this old man is willing to go to the Sect of all times and ask for them. If they don't give it to us, we will directly declare war on the Sect of all times. Declare war? The Mu Rong family's patriarch said coldly, do you think that my Mu Rong family is stronger than the Demon Fiend sect? This, or do you think that you can compete with the deicide shrine? The second elder was silent and then sat down. The Mu Rong family's patriarch said, the 2 third-rate evil sects also obediently took out spirit stones to redeem people. If my Mu Rong family declares war, we will undoubtedly be humiliating ourselves. A direct descendant of a family could be stupid, but the patriarch had to be smart. Otherwise, how could they survive in this cruel world? The Mu Rong family's patriarch was very smart. After learning about the 3-year promise, he did not express his stance to the outside world and chose to watch from the sidelines. After all, this was a matter between the Sect of all times and the Lily Holy Sect. However, that group of direct descendants were used to living like princes, and when they didn't keep an eye on them, they actually courted death and went to challenge them. Patriarch. The great elder asked, what do we do now? What else can we do? The Murong family's master's heart was bleeding. He said, quickly prepare the spiritual stones and redeem those bastards. Murong Shaolin and the others were the youngest direct descendants of the clan. If anything were to happen to them, it would be an unbearable blow to them. Whether or not a clan could continue to prosper depended entirely on the younger generation. If there was a loss in this aspect, the most serious consequence would be a direct decline. Hence, even if he knew that Jun Changshao was blackmailing him, the master of the Murong family still had to cooperate obediently. Sect of all times, at the foot of the mountain. With bruises all over their faces, Murong Shaolin and the others followed behind the great elder like frightened rabbits. 200,000 spirit stones in exchange for his freedom. However, the mental and physical devastation was like a brand that was deeply imprinted in his heart. The most miserable one was Murong Shaolin. After being crazily tortured by Yi Xingqian, he had a psychological shadow. After returning, he would have nightmares every night. Then, he would cover his head and beg for mercy in fear, stop fighting, stop fighting. Sigh. It could be considered a form of growth. Jun Changshao sat in the main hall, playing with the few space rings in his hand, and laughed. Originally, we had nothing to do with each other, but you insisted on coming over to give me spiritual stones. The Murong family is really kind. He had easily earned 200,000 spirit stones. He was very happy. Li Luocho said, recently, the martial arts world has been discussing the matter of our Sect of all times challenging the Lily Holy Sect. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, someone must have deliberately released the news. The 3-year agreement was a private agreement between the two sects, and he had never mentioned it to anyone. Now that the news had spread like wildfire, there was definitely a mastermind behind the scenes adding fuel to the fire. It should be the Lily Holy Sect that spread the news unilaterally. They want the whole world to see how our sect of all times overestimates ourselves. Jun Changshao muttered. A voice sounded in Li Luocho's ears. After a while, he said, Patriarch, I just received news that the largest betting company in the Falling Star continent has opened a bet. In terms of the odds, they are all optimistic about the Lily Holy Sect. Is that so? Jun Changshao was rather surprised. He did not expect that the battle with the Lily Holy Sect would actually alarm the betting company. Li Luocho said, many second and third-rate sects have already expressed that they will go to the Lily Holy Sect to watch the battle on the day of the battle. Be more specific. Jun Changshao said. Li Luocho calculated and said, there are at least 20 fourth-rate sects, 5 third-rate sects, and 2 second-rate sects, namely the Raging Flame Holy Sect and the Sword Holy Sect. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, I extorted a lot of spirit stones from the Raging Flame Holy Sect in the southern desolate state. If they come to watch the battle, I'm afraid they will think that our sect of all times is a joke. Li Luocho said, the Sword Holy Sect and the Lily Holy Sect are allies. Is that so? This surprised Jun Changshao. The Sword Holy Sect was one of the few sword sects in the Falling Star continent that majored in swordsmanship, and its strength was very strong. Of course. Not all disciples cultivated in swordsmanship, after all, the probability of a sword cultivator appearing was too small. If I bring my disciples to challenge the Lily Holy Sect, will this second-rate sword sect jump out? Jun Changshao murmured. Li Luocho said, it's hard to say. Jun Changshao rubbed his temples and said, challenging a second-rate sect is more troublesome than I thought. Crack, crack. The sound of bones breaking rang out, causing one's head to explode. Xiao Ziji clenched his fists tightly. Even though his face was already distorted, he still screamed. About an hour later, the power that seemed to be splitting tendons and dislocating bones dissipated, and his entire body suddenly collapsed to the ground. What was he doing? He was training. Where was he training? The fourth level of the training tower. The first level was tempering the body, the second level was tempering the movement technique, the third level was tempering the spirit energy, and the fourth level was tempering the tendons and bones. Su Xiaoma and Li Fei went to the second level for the first time, but it was actually the effect of the fourth level. The order was reversed. Tempering the tendons and bones. It was equivalent to developing the body's potential a second time, making it stronger and harder. The tempering process was like breaking all the bones in the body and then reconnecting them. The pain it brought was worse than death. After Xiao Ziji had completely adapted to the first, second, and third levels, he went to the fourth level as early as last month and began the harshest second tempering of the body. The 3-year agreement was getting closer and closer, and he was cultivating more diligently, so the tempering time was longer than before. Although he had recovered his aptitude and was even stronger than before. But Xiao Ziji was obsessed with the body molding, and when the conditions were right, he would continue to walk forward. He deserved to be the meat shield of the sect. Ta! At this moment, Yi Xingqian, who was also tempering his tendons and bones on the fourth level, walked to the stairs leading to the fifth level, and said, you only know how to temper the body, but the wooden stake that gets beaten up also needs to temper the soul. Chapter 642. Phew! Xiao Ziji took a deep breath and got up to follow him. Whoosh whoosh! Just as the two of them walked up, a terrifying soul energy came crashing down like a tsunami, instantly eroding their consciousness. The fifth level of the experience tower, soul tempering. The tempering of the body was still bearable, but the torture from the depths of the soul was indescribable. In just a few minutes, Xiao Ziji's face turned ferocious again, and the torture from the soul made him feel as if he was in the 18th level of hell. I can't back down. I can't give up. With his amazing perseverance, Xiao Ziji held on bitterly. On the other hand, Yi Xingqian was calm and composed, as if he could ignore the erosion of the soul energy. After being reborn in the body of the woodcutter, his body and meridians were very weak, but his greatest strength was his powerful soul. Even if he was tortured in the earth's core for thousands of years, he was still incomparable to ordinary people. Especially his understanding of the Taishan Sutra, his soul was constantly being repaired. Every level of the experience tower had a ranking. Knight Emperor did not have the advantage in the first few levels, so the 5th level was definitely tailor-made for him. However, the record holder was not Knight Emperor, but He Wudi. As a powerhouse from the upper realm, although his cultivation and soul had regressed, even a tenth of it was not comparable to Martial Emperor Chen. Therefore, Knight Sundara was destined to not be the record holder of any level of the experience tower. Some people would ask, can't you do it in the first few levels? After all, if he cultivated the Taishan Sutra, how could he be ahead of the other disciples? If it was in the past, he might be able to do it. However, after the 5 elements heaven reflection technique was fully popularized in the sect, Lord Knight Emperor's lead suddenly narrowed by a lot. Moreover, the Taishan Sutra had reached a bottleneck, and could not be upgraded to a higher level. At this moment, Knight Emperor could only focus on cultivating the 5 elements heaven reflection technique, and temporarily put aside the cultivation methods above the divine grade. An hour later, Xiao Ziji could not withstand the torture of the soul, and he crawled down on all fours. Fortunately, he had successfully met the requirements to pass the level, and was not sent out and suffered the side effects of failure. Yi Xingchen was still holding on. After another hour, his expression changed, and his eyebrows gradually furrowed. Plop! After enduring for 3 hours, Yi Xingchen finally collapsed to the ground. The two of them left the Tower of Experience in exhaustion. After a night of rest, they were full of energy again. Especially in terms of their physical bodies and souls, they had clearly improved. There weren't many disciples in the sect who could enter the 4th or 5th floor. For example, Su Xiaoma and Li Fei were still circling around the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors. The two of them mainly focused on their movement techniques. Only those who had tempered their bodies to a certain extent on the 1st level would barely be able to survive on the 4th level. Of course, Li Qingyang could also pass the 4th or 5th level. However, he pursued a balanced development, so when he reached a certain level of tempering, he would not torture himself excessively. Inner disciples like Long Xiang and Song Xianzhou might not be able to enter for the time being, but they would definitely challenge the 4th and 5th levels once they were used to it. These details will not be described. In short, just because the plot wasn't written didn't mean that it wouldn't happen. For example, the disciples training in the Tower of Experience. Did Jun Changshao go to the 4th or 5th level? The answer was yes. Because he was stuck at the peak of the King realm, he only experienced it once before focusing on developing the sect. The path he took was different from other protagonists. He was destined not to waste too much time on cultivation. In the icy plains, it was still the only inn in a few hundred miles. Lu Qianqian walked in again. Just a snack, anything. The waiter had just come to serve her and said calmly, "Okay, miss, please wait a moment." The guests in the dining hall were not the same batch as before. After a short silence, they began to brag and talk again. The topic of discussion was naturally the Sect of All Time's challenge to the Lily Holy Sect. There are still 4 months. Lu Qianqian said, "We should be able to make it." She casually ate 2 mouthfuls of food, put down a few taels of silver, and left the inn. After she left, the cold aura in the dining hall gradually dissipated, allowing the martial artists to drink and chat more freely. Extreme Cold Palace. The crater caused by the explosion had been filled up, and a new sect had been built. It was just that it did not have a sense of age. Ice. Ice Empress token. The Extreme Cold Palace Lord's legs went soft, and he almost knelt down. Lu Qianqian stood in front of him and showed him the token. She said coldly, "Your sect's Grand Elder went to the Sect of All Times to cause trouble. How do you want to settle this?" The Extreme Cold Palace Lord was about to cry. The Grand Elder went, but he was still detained in the Sect of All Times and had not returned. Who could he complain to? Mississippi, he said obsequiously, will do as you say. 100,000 spirit stones, Lu Qianqian said. As she spoke, she emitted a cold, ocean-blue aura, which shocked the extreme cold palace lord. 10,000 years ago, the Ice Empress had mastered the sea spirit ice chi and could freeze thousands of miles. Now that this woman was using a similar attribute, it meant that she had inherited the legacy. Yes. Yes, the extreme cold palace lord said hurriedly. Even though the weather was extremely cold, his forehead could not stop sweating. Of course, he was also cursing the 8 sect masters in his heart. If not for these bastards deliberately concealing the truth, he would not have rashly asked the Grand Elder to come out of seclusion. After receiving the 100,000 spirit stones, Lu Qianqian raised her hand. Screech, a snow-white bird that looked like a crane, flew over from the mountain peak in the distance. This beast was not big, and there was a light flickering on its head, giving off a very holy feeling. The extreme cold palace lord exclaimed, "Ice crane!" The crane landed on the training field. Lu Qianqian jumped lightly and landed on its back. She said, "Soon, bring your sect disciples to the Lily Holy Sect." Okay. The extreme cold palace lord hurriedly said. Poochie! Poochie! The ice crane flapped its wings and flew into the sky. Plop! The extreme cold palace lord collapsed on the ground and breathed heavily as if relieved of a heavy burden. Xianling Sect. Lu Qianqian landed on the training field. The senior members of the sect walked out of the hall and hurriedly bowed. Especially when they felt that the cold aura from this woman was even stronger than the first time they met, the Xianling Sect patriarch immediately guessed that she definitely had a deeper understanding of the Ice Emperor's inheritance. Bring me 200,000 spirit stones, Lu Qianqian said. Even the shameless Jun Changshao might not be able to directly ask for spirit stones without going through the procedures and asking for the reason. Here. The Xianling Sect patriarch hurriedly handed over the space ring that contained the spirit stones. Before Lu Qianqian left, she said, "Soon, bring your sect disciples to the Lily Holy Sect." Understood. The Xianling Sect patriarch trembled in fear. Subsequently, Lu Qianqian visited the other 7 sects that appeared in the extreme cold palace. She simply asked for spirit stones and sent them to the Lily Holy Sect. Why do we have to go to the East Haozhou? Isn't there news from outside that the Sect of All Times is going to challenge the Lily Holy Sect? In my opinion, she wants us to go over and cheer for the Sect of All Times. It's really a fantasy for a 5th-rate sect to challenge a 2nd-rate sect. There's no use even if we go and cheer for them. The patriarch sat together and discussed. Although they did not think highly of the Sect of All Times, since the Ice Emperor's successor said so, they could only start discussing the time to head to the East Haozhou. Eldest senior sister is back. Eldest senior sister is back. Su Xiaoma's shout instantly broke the silence in the Sect of All Times. Jun Changshao walked out of the hall and looked up at the sky. A white crane flapped its wings and landed slowly. Swoosh! Lu Qianqian jumped down and cupped her fists. Disciple Lu Qianqian has returned from her training. The disciples of the sect gathered around and welcomed their senior sister, whom they had not seen for a long time, with bright smiles. Eldest senior sister. Lu Wanchu's eyes reddened. Chu Xiaonan, Hua Ling, and the rest widened their eyes. They had heard of Lu Qianqian before, but they never expected their eldest senior sister to be so beautiful. It's good that you're back. Jun Changshao said, "It's good that you're back." Chapter 643. After Lu Qianqian returned, the cold aura once again filled the entire sect, making it difficult for many new disciples to adapt in a short period of time. The early disciples were used to it. They even felt that the sect would only be complete when their eldest senior sister returned. Eat more. In the cafeteria, Jun Changshao sat at the table with his chin in his hand. Lu Qianqian was silent. There were more than 20 kinds of dishes on the table, and first black and second black were still adding more. It was almost piled up into a small mountain. She missed Lu Wancher's cooking, but how could one person finish so many dishes? You've lost a lot of weight. Jun Changshao said, I'll make up for it today. That's right. Lu Wancher stood at the entrance of the kitchen and smiled. Eldest senior sister, you must finish it. Lu Qianqian was silent. She gently picked up her chopsticks and slowly ate. Eating such a long-lost delicacy again made her have mixed feelings. Buzz! She silently circulated the Taixian ice heart technique, repairing the slight cracks in her mental state, and still maintaining her heart as calm as water. During this period of time, not only did she comprehend the Ice Emperor's legacy, but she also completely stabilized her realm. Jun Changshao could also feel that his eldest disciple had returned again, and her temperament was colder than before. However, she seemed to be more humane and easier to get along with. In fact, Lu Qianqian was still as cold as before, even colder than before. However, Jun Changshao and the disciples of the Sect of all times did not feel it. Instead, they felt that she was gentler than before. This might be because she had a very high level of understanding of the ice realm, and could control it as she wished. Patriarch. After eating, Lu Qianqian said, I have 7 million spirit stones here. Oh, Jun Changshao was startled and said in surprise, how much? 7 million. Lu Qianqian repeated. Shua. Jun Patriarch stood up and asked with his mouth agape, where did you get it? Lu Qianqian didn't explain that it was extorted from the 9 fourth-rate sects and handed over the space ring filled with spirit stones. With so many spiritual stones, it was definitely a huge fortune. If he distributed them to the disciples, the Sect of all times' strength would definitely increase by a notch. Lu Qianqian's return, just like her personality, did not cause much of a stir in the sect. The disciples continued to cultivate diligently. With more spirit stones, regardless of whether they were in the inner, outer, or inner sect, they would be able to make significant improvements in a short period of time. The eldest disciple is back. Jun Changshao rested his chin on the back of his hand and said, I'm just waiting to go to the Lily Saint sect. It wasn't long either. There were only 2 months left. Northeast Luzhou. 9 fourth-rate sects of the same lineage set off for the Eastern Dawn state one after another. The other states and counties also began to move. The Sect of all times challenged the Lily Saint sect, and so many major sects announced that they would be going to watch the battle. When the time came, there would definitely be a gathering of heroes. Naturally, they wouldn't miss the opportunity to broaden their horizons. The various forces of the outside world moved together, but the Sect of all times was still operating as usual. During this period, Elder Gu performed well and was appointed as an elder. Evil Saint 5 Treasures was also assigned as the Discipline Hall Master. Speaking of which, after this guy received enough sunlight and was nourished by Lu Wancher's delicious food, he became more spirited and didn't seem eerie anymore. His strength was still at peak Wu Huang and couldn't recover. It wasn't that he didn't want to recover, but he had lived in the dark graveyard for too long and was tricked by the medicine saint with poison. It was difficult to recover to peak condition without relying on external items. This external item was the Tranquil Heart Saint Lotus. How many petals can you eat to recover Wuxing's cultivation? Jun Changshao asked. If such a powerful servant could return him to peak condition, he could completely go outside without any worries. I'll eat them all, Evil Saint 5 Treasures said. Jun Changshao said, can't I have less than 2 petals? Evil Saint 5 Treasures opened his eyes wide, and said, Master has already used 2 petals. That's right. Evil Saint 5 Treasures pulled his hair, his eyes filled with despair. What's wrong? Jun Changshao said. Evil Saint 5 Treasures collapsed. Without the Medicine Saint's nurturing method, the Tranquil Heart Saint Lotus will need at least 500 years to gather 1 petal. What he meant was, it would take at least 1,000 years for the Tranquil Heart Saint Lotus to recover all 8 petals. Evil Saint 5 Treasures couldn't wait, because with his cultivation level, Wuxing couldn't wait that long. Jun Changshao said, Does Senior Medicine Saint have a way to quickly nurture the tranquil heart, Saint Lotus? That's right, Evil Saint Five Treasures said. Jun Changshao held his chin and whispered, will it be recorded in a book? Sun Bukong. He transmitted his voice, study the book left behind by the Medicine Saint, report back immediately if you find anything. Sun Bukong, who was reading the books in the medicine hall, hurriedly said, yes. This guy was simply analyzing the medical books left behind by the Medicine Saint word by word. Although he hadn't found a way to treat Elder Wei's illness for the time being, he had benefited a lot from it. It seemed he was the only one who could take up the responsibility of the sect's medical treatment. In fact, Jun Patriarch could do it himself, at least he could learn a skill, but he was not interested at all. Managing a sect was already tiring enough. These miscellaneous things should be left to other people to handle. Half a month later, the second batch of medicinal herbs had matured. Jun Changshao opened the pill pavilion and directly refined them to the maximum. These medicinal herbs were used to refine Martial King pills. Because they were very important, the members of the medicine hall were unable to do it. Elder Wei could only personally plant them, but his experience was limited, so he could only gather 200 pills. Jun Changshao was very satisfied. After all, once the pills were refined, 200 peak Wuzong could instantly break through to the Martial King realm. If he continued to plant them in the future, sooner or later all the sect's disciples would reach the Martial King realm. In the future, if a sect bullied the sect of all times, Jun Patriarch would directly bring 10,000 Martial Kings to destroy them. The scene would be absolutely beautiful. Ding! 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 In just a few days, 200 Martial King pills were refined. Whoosh whoosh! In the sky above the sect of all times, a huge amount of Martial King realm aura gathered. The density was shocking. After a while, the aura began to converge, and 200 disciples successfully broke through to the Martial King realm. Among them were Mu Honglian, who had just entered the sect, and many other students. This is too magical. Breaking through to the Martial King realm so easily, I didn't even dare to dream about it. The disciples who broke through were extremely excited. After consuming the Martial King pills, the number of Martial Kings in the sect of all times gradually approached 300. This was very terrifying. Another month passed. There were only 10 days left before the 3-year agreement. Jun Changshao waved his hand and walked out of the main hall. The 4 elders, Jiangye, Ning Duzue, Ning Duxing, and Elder Gu followed closely behind the patriarch. They were the F4 of the sect of all times. Whoosh! On the training field, more than 10,000 disciples stood with their hands behind their backs. Their bodies were filled with an unyielding and heroic aura. 3 years had passed. Under Jun Changshao's hard work, the originally unrated sect now had the qualifications to compete with 3rd or 4th-rate sects. It was still far from enough. Jun Changshao was going to the East Haozhou to challenge the Lily Holy Sect today. During this period, the disciples of the sect of all times had also been working hard to cultivate and become stronger, all for this day to come. This trip to the Lily Holy Sect will be a huge test for the sect of all times. Do you have the confidence to win? Jun Changshao asked loudly. Yes. Li Qingyang and the others shouted in unison. Jun Changshao nodded, then pointed to the sky and said with a majestic aura, "Disciples, follow me to the East Haozhou." Yes. Whoosh! 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 Hurricane wolves flew over one by one. The disciples who were going to fight rode on them and galloped out of the mountain gate. All the Martial King realm disciples were going to the Lily Holy Sect this time. Jun Changshao's intention was, if they were going to fight, they would fight to their heart's content. Chapter 644. Back then, when he went to the Sacred Springs sect, Jun Changshao also brought a lot of people. Now that he was going to challenge the Lily Sacred Sect, it was even more comprehensive. The elders were Jiangye, the Ning brothers, and Elder Gu. The hall master was Zhen Dejuan. The evil saint of 5 treasures and the supreme elder of the extreme coldness palace also followed. Although the 2 of them did not join the sect, their soul sources were controlled by Jun Changshao and they were completely servants that he could control at will. Li Luoqiu and Elder Wei did not go. They stayed behind to take care of the daily affairs of the sect. Jun Changshao placed great importance on challenging the Lily Sacred Sect. Because as long as he defeated the sect of all times, he would be able to prove to the world that he had the absolute strength to stand on the continent. However, just as he walked down the Iron Bone Mountain, he saw a black mass of people appearing in the distant forest. The leader was Xie Guangquan. Behind him were the patriarchs of the various families in Qingyang City, as well as many warriors and ordinary people. There were even children who were learning to speak. The Lily Sacred Sect was far away, and as the city lord, Xie Guangquan did not have the time to go. Furthermore, that kind of second-rate sect might not even let him enter. Therefore, he came this time to send Jun Changshao off. The AI family head of Huyang City and the other 7 family heads of the other 7 cities also came with their people. Jun Patriarch. Xie Guangquan stopped and cupped his hands. I am unable to accompany you. I hope that the sect of all times will be invincible and invincible. 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 The people of Qingyang City shouted in unison. Xie Guangquan did not inform them. They all came on their own to send off the sect that had once protected the city and prevented them from becoming slaves. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered at the foot of the Iron Bone Mountain and shouted in unison. Their voices shook the heavens. In the outside world, many martial arts forces might not recognize the sect of all times. But in Qingyang County, this sect was already regarded as the holy land of martial arts. Son, Patriarch Li said, don't embarrass the sect of all times. Looking at his father whose hair had turned white, Li Qingyang swore in his heart, Father, don't worry, your son will use everything he has to defend the sect. Old Master Song was also encouraging Song Shenzhou. At that moment, as long as their children were in the sect of all times, their parents would feel extremely proud. Jun Changshao's heart gradually warmed up at the sight of so many Azure Sun County locals supporting him and the sect of all times. With your support, it's enough. Everyone. Jun Changshao said in a clear voice, wait for the triumphant return of the sect of all times. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Jun Changshao led his disciples towards the east. After walking for a long distance, he could faintly hear a shout behind him, the sect of all times is invincible and undefeatable. These words seemed to contain some kind of power that stimulated the blood of the disciples, causing the fighting spirit in their eyes to become even more intense. Lily Saint Sect, fight to your heart's content. Eastern House State, Lily Sacred Sect. At this moment, on the way to the main peak, various martial artists were advancing. Among them were the 9 fourth-rate sects of Lu State in the northeast. When the other prefectures saw this, their eyes were filled with astonishment. The martial artists of Lu State in the northeast mainly cultivated the ice element and rarely set foot in the prefectures with distinct seasons. Why were there so many of them today? Some time ago, Jun Changshao led his disciples and almost annihilated the extreme cold palace, which is equivalent to forming a grudge with Lu State in the northeast. 9 sects of the same lineage came to the Lily Sacred Sect to laugh at that guy. That makes sense. Everyone agreed. This sect that suddenly rose up is really bold. Not only did they dare to lead their disciples into Lu State in the northeast, but they also dared to challenge the second-rate Lily Sacred Sect. I heard that Jun Changshao is still young. I think he's only 20 years old. Young people are inevitably hot-blooded. It's normal for them to do some unreasonable things. If it weren't for this hothead, we wouldn't be lucky enough to witness so many major sections. On the way to the Lily Sacred Sect, the various martial artists chatted casually. It wasn't hard to tell that they had come from afar to broaden their horizons. The sect of all times challenged them. Sorry, they were simply a mantis trying to stop a chariot. They were overestimating themselves. Awo! Awo! At this moment, a series of wolf howls came from the foot of the mountain, attracting everyone's attention. Whoosh! 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 Numerous majestic wolf beasts carried numerous martial cultivators on their backs as they climbed up the mountain path in a crisscross pattern. Gale wolf? All the martial artists' eyes were filled with surprise. It's not a gale wolf. A martial artist who had studied ferocious beasts frowned and said, "It's a gale wolf." Gale wolf? All the martial artists' eyes were filled with surprise. Those were high-level wolf beasts. It was already good enough to tame one as a mount. Now that there were so many people riding them, the shock was self-evident. It's the people from the Sect of all times. Yes, they rode the wolf beasts into Lu State in the northeast back then. TSK, TSK. To be able to tame so many gale wolves, this newly risen sect has some skills. Screech suddenly, the sound of cranes could be heard from the sky. A strong icy aura instantly filled the air, causing everyone to shiver involuntarily. They looked up at the same time and saw a white crane flapping its wings as it flew over. Ice ray crane. That's a very rare bird in Lu State in the northeast. Everyone's jaws dropped. The ice ray crane was not very powerful, but because it could carry people and fly, it was a must-have for traveling, so many martial artists coveted it. Unfortunately, because it was too rare, very few people had been able to tame it since ancient times. There's someone up there. Many martial artists saw Lu Qianqian standing on the back of the ice ray crane, and their eyes widened. That woman was dressed in white and was extremely beautiful, like a fairy descending to the mortal world. So beautiful. Could she be a disciple of the Lily Holy Sect? She's emitting an icy aura. Maybe she's an ice-type martial artist from Lu State in the northeast. Everyone started to think. However, no matter how they thought about it, they did not expect that there would be such a young and beautiful woman in Lu State in the northeast. At this moment, many martial artists noticed that the martial artists from the extreme cold palace and other forces were walking in front of them, and their eyes were filled with awe. Therefore, they all guessed that the woman might be a martial artist with a high status in Lu State in the northeast. Screech suddenly, the sound of an eagle beast was heard again. Jun Changshao stood on the back of the black eagle demon ridge and flew away in the sky. One in white and one in black, one in front and one behind. It shocked all the martial artists. Jun Changshao. Someone recognized him and exclaimed in surprise. No way. The corners of an expert's mouth twitched as he said, "This fellow actually subdued a flying beast as well." Whoosh! Whoosh! Li Qingyang and the others rode on the hurricane wolves and flew past them. Suddenly, gusts of wind swept up, and the martial artist's clothes and hair were blown into a mess. After a while, hundreds of disciples came to the gate of the Lily Holy Sect and lined up neatly. TSK, so what if you have a hurricane wolf? When we enter later, we'll definitely be tortured badly compared to the second-rate sections. All the martial artists were disdainful. It was because the disciples of the Sect of all times had a hurricane wolf that they were not jealous of. Pht! Pht! The Black Eagle Demon Ridge landed slowly and hovered in front of the gate. Jun Changshao said loudly, "I've brought my disciples here to fulfill the 3-year promise." Chapter 645. The disciples were below, and the patriarch was riding on the Black Eagle. They surrounded the Lily Sacred Sect's gate. If they didn't know in advance what the Sect of all times was here for, many cultivators would think that they were here to cause trouble. How arrogant! An expert from another prefecture said in a low voice. The Lily Sacred Sect was a well-known second-rate sect. That guy brought his disciples here on wolf beasts and eagle beasts. He didn't have any manners at all. It wasn't that he was rude. It was just that Jun Changshao knew that if he came in a low-key manner, he would definitely be mocked. Thus, he might as well come in a high-profile manner and shut everyone's mouth. The effect was not bad. The hurricane wolves shocked the various forces, and the flying beasts made them even more jealous. Those who wanted to mock him had to see if they had the right to do so. Wait! Why did that fairy-like woman stop near Jun Changshao? Could it be that she wasn't an expert from Lu State in the northeast, but a disciple of the Sect of all times? It was at this moment that Jun Changshao made eye contact with the extreme coldness palace master and the others who had just arrived. Eh? Why are you here too? The 9 patriarchs were silent. Do you think we want to come? It's all because of your disciples. Grand Elder, looking at the old man in front of the gate, the extreme coldness palace master almost couldn't hold back his tears. Sigh. The Grand Elder of the extreme coldness palace sighed. After coming out of seclusion in the endless ice sea, he thought that he could avenge the sect. Who would have thought that not only was he beaten up, but his soul origin was also controlled and he was reduced to a prisoner? Patriarch. Lu Qianqian transmitted her voice. I called these people here to cheer for the sect. Jun Changshao was startled. He smiled and said, thank you. The various forces would definitely lean towards the Lily Sacred Sect. She called so many people here for the sake of the sect. Creak. The closed gate opened, and a faint voice sounded. Jun Patriarch, please come in. Let's go. Jun Changshao landed in front of the gate and stepped in. The disciples jumped down from the hurricane wolves and followed closely behind. Although this was a second-rate sect with a strong foundation, they didn't have any fear on their faces. It was obvious that they had experienced big scenes. Huff! Xiao Ziji took a deep breath and clenched his fist. Murong Exayan, I'm here. The outer courtyard of the 100 Unions Sacred Sect was very big, and every brick under their feet had a long history. At this moment, the various clans and forces of the eastern boundless continent that had arrived earlier had gathered at the training field. There were quite a number of them, at least 20 to 30,000. Jun Changshao walked in with his disciples, and they all looked at him with disdain. As a force of the eastern vast state, they would definitely lean towards the Lily Saint sect and view foreign sects as enemies. Mu Changhong was also. Initially, he did not plan to participate in this kind of sect war. However, half a month ago, he was invited by the city governor of Eastern Vast Prefecture's Monarch City. This was to let him witness with his own eyes how the Eternal Sect was being abused. City Lord Mu. Haotian City's City Lord, Ding Lingchun, locked his gaze on Jun Changshao and smiled. Is this the patriarch of the sect of all times that's been famous in the underworld recently? That's right, Mu Changhong said. Ding Lingchun smiled. Newborn calves aren't afraid of tigers. Mu Changhong knew that he didn't think highly of the sect of all times. He didn't bother to reply because he didn't have much confidence either. Thud. After a while, Jun Changshao stopped outside the martial arts practice field and said with his hands behind his back, 3 years ago, the sect of all times and your sect had a duel. Today, I'm here to fulfill the duel. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sect of all times elders, hall masters, and disciples stood behind him with their chests held high. There weren't many of them. Compared to the tens of thousands of experts from various sects in the eastern bright continent, there was a huge gap. However, the unyielding aura they exuded was not inferior to the other party. This, Mu Changhong was dumbfounded. There was clearly a huge gap between the sect of all times and a second-rate sect. Why did the entire sect of all times have such a fearless aura? If City Lord Mu had personally witnessed how Jun Changshao challenged the Vast Spirit sect and the Holy Spring sect, he would understand why they weren't afraid. It wasn't the first time that the weak fought against the strong. What was there to be afraid of? Sects from other states entered the Lily Holy Sect one after another. Many people instinctively moved to the sides and isolated Jun Changshao and the rest. The sects from the southwest Yangzhou did not come. Otherwise, they would definitely stand behind the sect of all times. Lu Qianqian turned around and glanced at the Xianling sect patriarch and the rest who had just entered. They instantly understood and braced themselves to stand behind Jun Changshao and the rest. Are the sects from the northeast Lu state here to support the sect of all times? Didn't they have a conflict some time ago? I heard that the extreme cold palace was almost destroyed. This is a deep-seated hatred, and they should fight to the death. Seeing the 9 fourth-rate sects from the northeast Lu state standing behind the sect of all times, the sects were instantly puzzled. The Xianling sect patriarch and the rest were also depressed. That Jun Changshao recklessly challenged a second-rate sect, and they were forced to support him. They had completely lost face. In the Lily Holy Sect main hall, Cheng Huixin and a few elders walked out. As expected of a second-rate sect, all of them had Wu Huang's level of cultivation. Jun Patriarch. Cheng Huixin said calmly, the battle agreement was set with Xiao Ziji. Why did you bring so many disciples here today? Jun Changshao said, since you came all the way here, you definitely won't be satisfied with just one battle. Why don't you fight a few more battles? Ha ha ha. One of the experts laughed out loud. Sect Master Jun is really bold. The others started whispering to each other. If he brought so many disciples here to challenge each other, it would be similar to the sect competition in many counties. Some people admired Jun Changshao's courage. He dared to bring disciples to a second-rate sect to be tortured. Cheng Huixin said coldly, since Jun Patriarch is so interested, my Lily Holy Sect will naturally accompany you to the end. Then, she waved her hand. Swoosh! Swoosh! The sect disciples all walked forward and stood at the edge of the martial arts field. The Lily Holy Sect disciples were all female, and their looks were not bad. When they lined up like this, it felt like a group of flowers fighting for the prettiest. If you compare yourself to others, you'll die. If you compare goods, you'll throw them away. Lu Qianshan and Mu Honglian, who stood behind Jun Changshao, completely suppressed the female disciples of this second-rate sect in terms of looks and aura. TSK, TSK. A powerful figure didn't care about looks but cultivation. Thus, he praised, these Lily Holy Sect disciples are all high-level Wuzong. Then, he looked at the hundreds of disciples brought by Jun Changshao and shook his head. The two can't be compared at all. On the surface, the disciples of the sect of all times were indeed incomparable to the Lily Holy Sect, because they all relied on the hidden cultivation technique to suppress their cultivation. Not only were there Wuzong, but there were also martial masters. Jun Changshao said indifferently, Elder Cheng, my sect of all times came to challenge you with full sincerity. Please take it seriously and don't send these ugly melons and dates. The corners of the cultivators' mouths twitched. The aptitude and cultivation of the Lily Holy Sect disciples were not bad, but he actually described them as ugly melons and dates. Cheng Huixin said coldly, Jun Patriarch, the disciples sent by my sect are enough to fight with your disciples. If you send stronger disciples, you will be suspected of bullying the weak. It's fine. Jun Changshao said, I like to be bullied by the strong. Your sect can send your most elite disciples to fight. Like to be bullied by the strong? In an instant, the various forces gave Jun Patriarch an evaluation. This guy is crazy. Chapter 646. To think that the patriarch of the sect of all times dared to challenge a second-rate sect. If he was not sick, why would he do such an irrational thing? Thinking of this, everyone immediately felt relieved. Humph, an old man with a sword on his back standing near the main hall said coldly, the Lily Sacred Sect has already shown enough respect by sending out so many inner disciples. Jun Patriarch, please know your place. Jun Changshao looked at him and smiled, you are Elder of the Sword-Controlled Sacred Sect. The old man's tone was calm, but his body emitted an innate arrogance. So it's a second-rate sword sect expert. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, no wonder you have such a strong cheap aura. Sorry for the disrespect. The elder of the sword-controlled sacred sect naturally did not know that this guy purposely called swords cheap. He said indifferently, City Lord Mu is also here. Quickly ask Xiao Ziji to come out and fight. If he loses, quickly leave so that he won't lose face. City Lord Mu was silent. I'm also here to watch the show. Can you not drag me into this? Lose? Jun Changshao shook his head and smiled, then looked at Cheng Huixin, and said, "If that's the case, I won't waste any more time. Let's start now. Xianzhou, fight." "Yes." Song Xianzhou strode forward and stood in the training field. Being the first to fight since he came to the Lily Sacred Sect made his blood boil. Seeing that the challenger was not Xiao Ziji, Cheng Huixin frowned, and said, "Jun Patriarch, do you really plan to let your disciples challenge one by one?" She did not want to waste too much time. She only hoped that her disciples could defeat Xiao Ziji quickly and end this farce. The sect of all times came to challenge them and thought that it was a farce. They really looked down on them. "That's right," Jun Changshao said. He did not plan to let Xiao Ziji fight first. After all, this was the finale. "Humph," the elder of the Sword Control Sacred Sect said indifferently, "you overestimate yourself." Jun Changshao knew that he and the Lily Sacred Sect were allies. It was normal for him to be hostile, so he could not be bothered. "All right." Cheng Huixin raised her hand. Shua! A beautiful woman walked up to him. She was an inner disciple of the Lily Holy Sect, and her strength had already reached the 9th stage Wuzong. Song Xianzhou was a little speechless. Ever since he started practicing martial arts, this was the first time he had fought with a woman. It was inevitable that he would feel a little uncomfortable. However, when he thought of the patriarch's warning that he should not be soft-hearted even if his opponent was a female, his gaze immediately became firm. "Miss, I'm sorry." Lily Holy Sect, Lu Xian. Sect of all times, Song Xianzhou. After announcing one's name, it meant that the first battle had begun. However, before the two of them even started fighting, many martial artists had already begun discussing in private. Even though the Sect of all times disciple whose fighting looks pretty good, he's only at rank 6 or rank 7. How can he possibly defeat a rank 9 Wuzong? You still think that the Sect of all times can win after coming here? That's true. Coming to the Lily Holy Sect to watch the competition was only secondary. The real purpose was to witness the strength of the various sects' experts. Currently, there were many experts from 3rd and 4th-rate sects gathered in the arena. There were even elders from the Sword Holy Sect. It could be said that this trip was not in vain. Whoosh! At this moment, the Lily Holy Sect disciple named Lu Xian made the first move. She waved her hands in the air and instantly formed a gentle force. Song Xianzhou frowned slightly. It wasn't that he was afraid, but that his opponent was too weak. He had 100 ways to defeat her. Forget it. Let's use the simplest way. Song Xianzhou stood on the spot without moving, allowing the gentle force to sweep over him. When it got close, he threw out a heavy punch and directly shattered it into pieces. Lu Xian took a few steps back, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. This person's strength was not to be underestimated to be able to break the gentle palm strike so easily. The experts from various forces were also very surprised. The Lily Holy Sect disciple's move had the strength of 1,000 pounds, but it was actually broken by a heavy punch. His strength was definitely at the level of one who could defeat 10 people with brute strength. Was this something that a beginner Wuzong could do? Shua! Lu Xian rushed over with her mystical footwork. His hands continuously formed hand seals, and layers of soft power spread out like waves. Song Xianzhou shook his head, and gathered spiritual energy in his fists, and directly used the landslide fist. He wanted to use the most explosive force to break the most gentle force. Boom! 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 In an instant, the gentle force that swept over was completely broken. Lu Xian's expression was extremely ugly. She wanted to continue her attack, but she saw Song Xianzhou appear in front of her. He put a hand on her soft shoulder and said, "Excuse me." Boom! He directly pressed her to the ground. The corners of the martial artist's mouths twitched. She was a woman, after all. To directly lift her up and smash her to the ground, this was too ungentlemanly. Lu Xian was quite badly hit, and her thoughts were in a mess. Shua! Song Xianzhou grabbed her shoulder again, and then lifted her up high, and suddenly threw her with force. She flew out, and then fell out of the arena in an extremely embarrassing manner. The first battle ended. If Lu Xian was not a woman, she would have been killed in an instant. Song Xianzhou did not even unleash his martial king cultivation, but suppressed it to the 5th or 6th stage, and defeated this 9th stage Wuzong. Really? This was too weak. Ding! Defeated Lily Holy Sect Disciple X1. A notification rang in his ears, and the number of victories appeared on the Epic Mission panel. Jun Changxiao's lips curled into a smile. Shi Lu's mission was to bring his disciple to challenge the Lily Holy Sect, and to help his disciple Xiao Ziji regain the dignity that he had lost. Now that Song Xianzhou defeated a Lily Holy Sect disciple, he realized that this should be similar to the epic mission to challenge the Sacred Spring Sect. In other words, as long as his disciple defeated more opponents, he would continue to complete the mission, and even exceed the quota. Smack! Jun Changxiao cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for letting me win." Cheng Huixin's face darkened. The few disciples that she brought to the sect of all times were not strong, and it was reasonable that they were defeated by a girl, but this time, they sent a 9th stage Wuzong. What made it even harder for her to accept was the aura released by the disciples of the sect of all times was only at the 5th or 6th stage. How could they defeat Lu Xian so easily? Patriarch Song Xianzhou said, "Can I continue?" Hearing this, Cheng Huixin almost vomited blood. Previously, Ling Yuanxue had said the same thing, but in the end, she had defeated 9 disciples of the Lily Holy Sect by herself. Could it be that the disciples of the sect of all times were all so arrogant? Or could it be that in their eyes, the disciples of the Lily Holy Sect were all very weak? They could fight many of them at once? Continue. Jun Changxiao said. The epic mission had an excess completion rate. If it was allowed, he did not mind his disciple defeating all the disciples of the Lily Holy Sect. At that time, once the mission was completed, the rewards would definitely be rich. That's right. There was still Shi Wu's mission reward that had not been given out. Jun Changxiao's eyes burned, and urged, "Elder Cheng, send someone to fight." Cheng Huixin said coldly, "Qiao Rong, fight." Yes. Another inner disciple of the Lily Holy Sect went to fight. Unfortunately, Song Xianzhou, who let go, did not give the other party a chance to attack, and coldly sent him flying. Chapter 647. The second disciple sent out by the Lily Sacred Sect was defeated before he could even use a move. This made all the cultivators widen their eyes. That Song Xianzhou was clearly only a 5th or 6th grade martial ancestor realm cultivator. How was he able to fight against a higher grade martial ancestor realm cultivator? And how was he able to kill him so cleanly? The disciples brought by Jun Changxiao were all martial kings. Any one of them could be easily defeated. Unless the Lily Sacred Sect sent out their most elite disciples, there was no way they could win. Mu Changhong was stunned. He didn't think that the sect of all times would be able to gain an advantage over the Lily Sacred Sect. However, they won both battles. This was beyond his expectations. "Father." Mu Honglian's voice rang in his ears, "Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. Was this normal? Wait. Why would his daughter send him a message? Could it be that she had broken through to Martial King? Voice transmission technique. Only Martial Kings could do that. Not only had Mu Honglian broken through to this level, but she had also done so for a few months. However, the Patriarch had ordered that they must suppress their cultivation to make others think that they were only Wuzong level. Today, Jun Changxiao brought his disciples to the Lily Sacred Sect to make them pretend to be weak. Then, they would use their strength to slap the faces of the other sects. Song Xianzhou won both battles, which was equivalent to slapping their faces. Because no one would have thought that this seemingly weak disciple could easily defeat 2 high-stage Wuzong. Don't be hasty. The show had just begun. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, Elder Cheng, your disciple is as weak as the one who challenged my sect. Why don't you send a few more to fight him together? Song Xianzhou defeated the second disciple of the Lily Sacred Sect. Another epic mission was added. He couldn't wait for the other party to send more disciples to fight him. Then, he would listen to the beautiful notification sound of the increase in the number of people. Too arrogant. Do they really think their disciples are strong? The Lily Sacred Sect's disciples are proficient in all kinds of formations, especially the 7 stars moon capturing formation. Its power is unpredictable. If they send 7 disciples, that guy will definitely be beaten black and blue. The cultivators of the various sects in the Eastern Vast Prefecture discussed. They didn't know that Cheng Huixin had brought her disciples to Azure Sun County to break the agreement, so they naturally didn't know that the 7 stars moon seizing formation couldn't restrict the disciples of the sect of all times. June Patriarch. The elder of the Sword Control Saint sect said coldly, since you're so confident, why don't you fight with my disciple? I can't watch this anymore. He had to humiliate the sect of all times in public. Jun Changshao said, sure. As long as the world understands the strength of the sect of all times, he won't care who his opponent is. Furthermore, this old man was really arrogant. Do you think that a sword cultivator who cultivates the way of the sword can defeat my disciple? Yes. Today, the sect of all times will not only challenge the Lily Saint sect, but also the Sword Control Saint sect. Amazing, amazing. Everyone seemed to be impressed, but they were actually sneering. Mu Changhong clutched his head and broke down. Jun Patriarch, you're too bold. Challenging the Lily Saint sect was already exciting enough, but he still had to accept the challenge from the Sword Control Saint sect. Did he think that second-rate sects were easy to bully? No way. Jun Patriarch had always believed that second-rate sects were very strong in terms of foundation and overall strength. If it was just the strength of their disciples, he was still confident. Ling Fei. The elder of the Sword Control Saint sect said coldly, go and fight with this disciple of the sect of all times. Yes. The disciple called Ling Fei strode out. His long and narrow eyes flashed with sharpness. It was obvious that he was a professional sword cultivator. Whoosh whoosh when he walked onto the training field and was a few meters away from Song Xianzhou, an even sharper aura exploded. This kid is at least a 9th-grade sword grandmaster. An expert praised. Another person standing at the side said solemnly, I've heard of this Ling Fei before. He's an inner disciple of the Sword Control Saint sect and has a strong understanding of the way of the sword. He seems to be an Earth-class genius on the Gathering of Heroes list. When everyone heard that, they were filled with respect. Even the most ordinary inner disciple of a second-rate sect could be ranked as an Earth-class genius. How amazing was that? Earth-class genius? Yi Xingqian was instantly tempted. However, Zhou Hong was one step ahead of him and said, Patriarch, this disciple requests to fight. No need. Jun Changshao said, the Sword Control Saint sect brought quite a number of disciples. Leave this to Song Xianzhou. Yes. Looking at the group of disciples behind the elder of the Sword Control Saint sect and feeling the way of the sword they were emitting, Zhou Hong was instantly filled with a strong desire to fight. A true swordsman did not care about winning or losing. He only cared about whether he could meet an opponent who was on par with him and whether he could have a good fight. Ling Fei said calmly, show me your weapons. Whoosh! Song Xianzhou waved his hand and took out the frostlight sword. The disciples of the 100 Union Saint sect who came this time all had a middle-grade frostlight sword. Of course, some of the disciples' weapons were not specially given out by Jun Changshao. They relied on the contribution points obtained from missions and bought from the weapons machine. Other than the fixed monthly martial arts resources, if the disciples wanted to obtain more pills and weapons, they had to do missions from the sect. Your sword is not bad. Ling Fei glanced at the middle-grade frostlight sword and said calmly, unfortunately, it's far inferior to mine. Clang! As soon as he finished speaking, the sword on his back was unsheathed. It was a 3-foot-long green sword. The sword's body emitted a sharp light, which made all the martial artists believe that its quality was definitely not low. A sword cultivator with a good sword was like adding wings to a tiger. When Ling Fei took out his weapon, all the forces in the eastern vast continent were certain that the disciple of the sect of all times named Song Xianzhou would lose without a doubt. Why? Because the sword control saint sect was far stronger than Wuzong in terms of strength. Let's begin, Ling Fei said proudly. Song Xianzhou did not decline and rushed forward with the frostlight sword in his hand. Whoosh! 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 The sword's radiance intertwined in a complicated manner. Ling Fei smiled coldly and stepped forward. He waved the 3-foot-long green sword in the air and instantly formed an unparalleled sword qi. This person's strength was indeed stronger than the 2 disciples of the Lily Saint sect. Boom! 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 The sword's radiance collided with the unparalleled sword qi and instantly destroyed it. What? Ling Fei's expression changed. Whoosh! Song Xianzhou used the cloud-treading steps and appeared in front of him unexpectedly. The frostlight sword was already on his neck. He said calmly, "You've lost." This. Everyone's eyes widened. The sword control Saint Sect's disciples' sword technique was very powerful. Even if this person had broken through it, he should not have been able to rush over instantly. Damn it! Even though Ling Fei was unwilling, he had to admit that he had lost. He did not lose because of the sword on his neck, but because of the sword's aura. The overwhelming strength he felt when they collided earlier made him deeply realize that he was completely unable to withstand a single blow from this person. Ding! Defeated sword control Saint Sect's disciple X1. Jun Changshao was stunned. Wasn't this epic mission targeted at the Lily Saint sect? Why would defeating a sword control Saint Sect's disciple give him a mission score? The system said, the 2 sects are in an alliance. Whoever is defeated will be counted. I see. Jun Changshao grinned and said, who else is not convinced? Come and fight me. Chapter 648. Ling Fei, who was ranked Earth, was easily defeated by Song Xianzhou. This was much more shocking than the 2 Lily Sacred Sect disciples. Therefore, all the martial artists were dumbfounded. What was even more shocking was, the guy who fought 3 rounds was not even panting. It was obvious that he was not serious yet. Could it be that this disciple of the sect of all times, who looked like he was only at the 5th or 6th rank, was already strong enough to fight against a martial king? The sword control Sacred Sect elder frowned. His disciple's move was broken, and he had a sword on his neck. The speed of his defeat was too fast. This was unacceptable, unbearable. Fong Qingye. The sword control Sacred Sect elder said in a deep voice, out, elder sure. Cheng Huixin stopped him and said, he's here to challenge my Lily Sacred Sect. Please watch from the side. It doesn't matter. Jun Changshao shrugged and said with a look that deserved a beating, today, my sect of all times is here in Eastern House State. We welcome disciples from all forces to challenge us at any time. If the sword control Sacred Sect could be considered as part of the epic mission, then what about disciples from the same state? I'm looking forward to it. This guy is really arrogant. Does he think that there's no one in Eastern House State? This is intolerable. The martial artists from all forces in Eastern House State were instantly enraged. If they were not in the Lily Sacred Sect, they would have already sent their outstanding disciples to fight. Mu Changhong's mouth twitched. Jun Patriarch, I'm here to challenge the Lily Sacred Sect, not the entire Eastern House State. As long as I can complete the epic mission, Jun Changshao would really dare to declare war on the entire state. Jun Patriarch. Cheng Huixin raised her hand and said indifferently, your disciple is powerful. My sect will have to take this seriously. Swoosh! A graceful figure flew over from afar and landed lightly on the training field. It was a beautiful woman who was about 20 years old. Her long black hair was scattered behind her back, and she looked very lively. Jiang Qingyu. Direct disciple. The Lily Sacred Sect is finally serious. That guy will definitely lose. The martial artists from Eastern House State were instantly excited. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, Elder Cheng, you should have been serious long ago. It's more interesting this way. Profound arc. Fight with him properly, don't be so modest anymore. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. He had been so modest that he had consecutively killed 3 disciples from second-rate sects with decent aptitude. If he were to get serious, how were they supposed to fight? The patriarch wants me to let go. Song Xianzhou shook his head and said, Miss, please. Whoosh! Whoosh! As soon as she finished speaking, Jiang Qingyu crossed her hands, and an aura like that of a tsunami suddenly erupted from her body. Martial King. This personal disciple is a martial king. All the martial artists exclaimed. Just the disciples alone had reached the king realm. As expected of a second-rate sect with a solid foundation. The Eastern Haozhou martial artist sneered. Kid! Are you still showing off? Huff Jiang Qingyu waved her hands, and the aura she exuded quickly condensed into a materialized palm print in midair, pressing down on Song Xianzhou. A king-level martial artist's understanding of the heaven and earth attribute was obviously stronger than a master-level martial artist's. Therefore, when she displayed a martial arts technique similar to a palm technique, many of the younger generation who were stuck at the Wuzong level were envious. Earth-shattering fist. Song Xianzhou strode forward, waving his fists fiercely in midair, forming a dense fist print, directly facing the huge palm that was pressing down. TSK, the crowd was disdainful. Undeniably, this guy's fist technique was pretty good, but fighting against a martial king was just like hitting a rock with an egg. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a loud noise was heard. The fist print, which carried the power of an avalanche and an earth-shattering force, blasted onto the huge palm that was pressing down, and instantly, cracks appeared. The smiles of the martial artists who witnessed this froze. Break! At this moment, Song Xianzhou stomped his foot on the ground, and his right fist was instantly enveloped in flames. He used earth-shattering fist again. That guy is a fire elemental martial artist. Boom! Before the crowd could even react, Song Xuanzhou's fist, which was enhanced by flames, directly shattered the palm print that was bitterly holding on. Pft! Jiang Qingyu took a few steps back, and spat out a mouthful of blood. Whoosh! Song Xianzhou strode forward, and his body was instantly surrounded by scorching flames. He said, How can the light of a firefly compete with the brilliance of the moon? Boom! Boom! The scorching flames instantly turned into fiery fists, and crazily bombarded. Thump! 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 Jiang Qingyu took a few steps back, and directly retreated out of the martial arts field. Then, she could no longer support herself, and fell to the ground with a pale face. Huff huff, the flames around his body gradually receded, and Song Xianzhou stood proudly. He cupped his hands and said, Thank you for letting me win. Even if his opponent was a woman, he would not show mercy to her. Ding! Defeated Lily Holy Sect Disciple X3. Outside the martial arts field, it was completely silent. The martial artists of the Eastern Haozhou all widened their eyes. The Lily Holy Sect had sent out a martial king as their direct disciple, but they still lost. They lost so thoroughly. At that moment, their faces felt like they had been ruthlessly slapped dozens of times, and they could feel a burning pain. The experts furrowed their brows. This sect of all time's disciple was a fire elemental martial artist, which surprised them. However, when he attacked, his aura was still at the level of a martial master. How could he beat a martial king to the point where she could not even fight back? To be honest, even if he did not use his martial king strength, Song Xianzhou could still defeat a low-rank martial king like Jiang Qingyu. Because regardless of aptitude, physical body, or spiritual energy, he had an absolute advantage. Elder Cheng. Jun Changshao said indifferently, Your sect's direct disciple is only a so-so. At this moment, He had the right to be arrogant. Crack! Cheng Huixin clenched her fists tightly. Since the beginning, the sect of all times had not changed a second disciple, but her side had lost 3 people in a row, and one of them was a martial king. This was simply unacceptable. Patriarch Song Xianzhou said, "I'm a little tired." He was a little embarrassed that he had been acting cool for 4 consecutive matches. Patriarch Li Tiantian said, "Can I fight?" "Go." "Yes." Li Tiantian stepped onto the martial arts field and replaced Song Xianzhou. Then, he glanced at the Lily Holy Sect disciples and hooked his finger, "Ladies, bring it on." This action, this tone, how despicable. Elder. A Lily Holy Sect disciple could not tolerate it and said, "This disciple is willing to fight." "Go." Cheng Huixin said. In her opinion, this new sect of all times disciples' aura was much weaker than Song Xuanzhou's. His strength should not be too high. On the martial arts field, the 2 of them exchanged names. Swoosh! Li Tiantian did not think that the lady had the right to attack first, so he rushed over with the cloud-treading steps and did not give her any chance to use the landslide fist. Boom! Boom! Spiritual energy spread out and wreaked havoc on the martial arts field. Plop! Not long after, the Lily Holy Sect disciple who was fighting was sent flying. "Thank you for letting me win." Li Tiantian grinned. The more he looked at him, the more he wanted to beat him up. Sigh. Jun Changshao shrugged and said, "Elder Cheng, your sect's inner sect disciple is too weak." Cheng Huixin was so angry that her hands were trembling. "How about this, let's change the game." Jun Changshao said, "Each of my sect's disciples will fight 10 rounds with 10 of your sect's disciples. If you lose 1 round, you lose 1 round. How about that?" Chapter 649. A disciple would fight 10 battles, and losing 1 battle would be considered a loss. This was a very exciting way to play. Of course, the martial artists present could also tell that Jun Changshao was indirectly humiliating the Lily Holy Sect. How awesome! Letting a disciple fight 10 people at once, and the opponents were disciples from second-rate sects. Many forces from other provinces began to admire Jun Changshao. After all, others might not have such boldness. Cheng Huixin was so angry that she gritted her teeth. The forces from the eastern vast continent who came to watch the battle could not take it anymore. A sect from the southwestern Yangzhou was so arrogant that they had the urge to curse. Jun Changshao could see the anger in the eyes of the eastern vast continent martial artists. He shook his head and said, "The world is so beautiful, but you guys are so violent. This is not good, not good." Mu Changhong's mouth twitched. "My Jun Patriarch, if you continue to add fuel to the fire, you'll really become the enemy of the entire eastern vast continent." Humph, the Sword Control Holy Sect elder who had been silent all this time could not help but say, "Jun Patriarch, can the Sword Control Holy Sect participate in this game?" "No problem." Jun Changshao glanced at the various forces in the eastern vast continent and said, "You can send your disciples to fight. The sect of all times will not refuse anyone. He's too arrogant. Fight, we must fight. I don't believe that the sect of all times can defeat everyone in the world." The powerhouses from various forces were provoked and glared at each other. If it were not for the fact that they were fighting as disciples, they would have rolled up their sleeves and fought personally. This guy, Mu Changhong, looked like he was about to break down. He could see that Jun Changshao was not only here to challenge the Lily Holy Sect, but also the entire eastern vast continent. "I've lived for so long, but I've never seen such an arrogant junior." In the beginning, he felt that Jun Changshao's visit to the northeastern Lu prefecture was to his liking. Now, he could not take it anymore. Jun Patriarch. A sect elder from the eastern vast continent said, "Is it possible to send 10 people at once?" "Yes." Jun Changshao said, "It saves time." "All right." The patriarch said in a clear voice, the 10 disciples of our great Ing sect will battle the disciples of the sect of all times. Since this guy was so arrogant, he didn't care about bullying him with numbers. Furthermore, he was the one who suggested it, and no one forced him to do it. Shwa! Shwa! The 10 disciples of the Daeng sect all went up the stage. Although this was a fourth-rate sect, the disciples they brought were all top-notch. Their average cultivation was between 8th and 9th stage Wuzong. Daeng sect, Sun Hai. Great Ing sect, Qi, stop wasting time. Li Tian interrupted them and said impatiently, hurry up and come at me together. The anger in the eyes of the 10 disciples of the Daeng sect was almost uncontrollable. Split up. Sun Hai said coldly. The other 9 disciples quickly spread out as if they had set up some kind of formation and surrounded Li Tian. Go! Shwa! Shwa! The 10 disciples had a tacit understanding and attacked almost at the same time. The aura produced by the explosion of their cultivation was quite powerful. Unfortunately, before they could completely set up the formation, Li Tian used cloud-treading steps and rushed over. His right fist was like a hammer and directly hit the chest of a Daeng sect disciple. Bang! He flew out and fainted on the spot when he landed. When dealing with female martial cultivators, as a man, he naturally couldn't be too heavy-handed. However, it was different when dealing with male martial cultivators. There was only one word to describe it: boat. Bang! Bang! Li Tian moved around frequently and swung his fists. With the force of 10,000 pounds, he instantly sent 2 Daeng sect disciples flying. So strong. Everyone was dumbfounded. Just at this moment, a few more Daeng sect disciples were sent flying. In just a moment, only Li Tian was left in the martial arts arena. That speed, that power, it really gave the spectating martial artists an extremely strong visual sense. As for the 10 disciples of the Daeng sect, without exception, they all fainted outside the martial arts arena. They were still neatly lying down. Ding! Defeated Daeng sect disciple X1. Ding, ding, ding. Defeated Daeng sect disciple X10. The notification sounded 10 times consecutively. It was the most beautiful sound in the world, causing Jun Changshao to be immersed in it and unable to extricate himself. As expected, torturing the disciples of other sects was also part of the mission. This epic mission 6 wasn't targeting the Lily Saint sect, but the entire Eastern Hao prefecture. Come, come. Jun Changshao waved his hand and said, who else is not convinced? Hurry up and send your disciples to fight. At this moment, he couldn't wait to add all his attribute points to taunt so that all the sects in the Eastern Hao prefecture would lose their rationality and fight. The Xinfeng sect will fight. Swoosh! 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 The 10 disciples of the Xinfeng sect walked up to the martial arts arena. Jun Changshao said, Sima Zhongda, go. Yes. Sima Zhongda went up, and Li Tian went down. Boom! 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 The unique martial arts of the sect of all times were displayed on the martial arts arena, and the disciples of the Xinfeng sect were sent flying one by one. When they came, they were confident, but when they left, they were in a sorry state. Continue. Jun Changshao laughed wildly and said, don't listen to me. His expression was very annoying, and it made all the sects in the Eastern Hao prefecture angry. Therefore, they sent their disciples to fight. They didn't believe that it would be difficult to defeat even one disciple of the sect of all times by sending 10 people. If they sent 10 martial kings, they would definitely have a chance. Sending Wuzong's level was to give Jun Changshao the mission points. Boom! 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 Ding! 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 The notifications kept ringing. Cui Bujian, Lin Jiangheng, and the others fought one after another and defeated the disciples of the various sections. The number of epic missions 6 easily exceeded 60. Mu Changhong was completely dumbfounded. He knew better than anyone that the disciples who fought one after another were not the elite disciples of the sect of all times. For example, Li Qingyang and Yi Xingchen hadn't fought yet. Even the most ordinary disciples of the sects could defeat 10 of them at once. If they sent their elite disciples, wouldn't the disciples of the various sects in the Eastern Hao Prefecture be even more powerless? At that moment, Mu Changhong was relieved. No wonder Jun Patriarch dared to be so arrogant. It turned out that he was really powerful. Fight, fight. Today, I'll let the martial artists of the Eastern Hao Prefecture understand that a fifth-rate sect in the southwestern Yangzhou can defeat you until you doubt your life. Ding Lingchuan's expression was extremely ugly. He had specially sent out an invitation to Mu Changhong to watch the battle. His intention was to embarrass the sect of all times. In the end, not only did his wish not come true, but he was also watching the forces in the prefecture being tortured. City Lord Ding. Mu Changhong said, "I've embarrassed myself in front of you." Ding Lingchun was silent on the surface, but he was roaring in his heart, "You bastards, can you stop embarrassing me? Can you at least win one battle?" The forces of the Eastern Hao Prefecture fought one after another, but they were completely defeated. Some sect leaders wanted to continue fighting but were stopped by the Grand Elder of the Sword Saint sect. He said in a deep voice, "Seventh Swordsman, fight." Yes. 7 young men with swords on their backs walked out. The 7 of them were about the same age. They exuded a sharp aura like walking swords. Seventh Swordsman. He's the most special disciple of the Sword Saint sect. It's said that those who can become one of the 7 swordsmen will definitely be promoted to an elder of the Sword Saint sect in the future. Chapter 650. The 7th Swordsman. It was a permanent position in the Sword Control Holy Sect. Only disciples who had a good understanding of Sword Dao could become one of them. Those who could become the 7th Swordsman might not be the strongest in the sect, but as long as they had enough experience, they could easily become an elder. Therefore, as long as one became the 7th Swordsman, it was equivalent to becoming an elder. For example, Elder Shur of the Sword Control Holy Sect was a member of the 7th Swordsman. He might not be outstanding among his peers, but he still became an elder in the end. Patriarch. Zhou Hong's eyes were burning. This disciple requests to fight. The 7 disciples of the Sword Control Holy Sect exuded strong sword intent. He was eager to have a good fight with them. Go ahead. Zhou Hong stepped onto the martial arts field. The sword in his hand was trembling slightly, as if it was eager to accompany its master in a fight with a sword Dao expert. Thud. Zhou Hong stopped. The battle intent in his dark eyes grew stronger. Ha! The 7th swordsman of the Sword Control Holy Sect frowned. Their intuition told them that this person's comprehension of Sword Dao was not inferior to theirs. I didn't expect that the sect of all times would have a genius in Sword Dao, the Sword Control Holy Sect elder said in surprise. Not only Sword Dao, but also Knife Dao. Ma Yongning crossed his arms and stood sideways among the disciples. A black kitchen knife hung on his back. What a pity. He shook his head and said, "There are no swordsmen on the martial arts field." Although Zhou Hong did not unleash his sword aura, he was not inferior to the 7 disciples of the Sword Control Holy Sect at all. A swordsman. This person was definitely a swordsman. All the martial artists instantly made a judgment in their hearts. On the Falling Star continent, the most boring thing was a fight between Sword Dao martial artists. At least half of the time, they were showing off. This was not the case. Zhou Hong and the 7th swordsman began. They kept a certain distance, and no one spoke. They were like wooden men. A few minutes later, some of the martial artists yawned, and some even picked their nose. Jun Changshao, on the other hand, was watching with rapt attention. He could feel that there was an invisible clash between the swords. There were not many fancy moves in a fight between swordsmen. As long as they made a move, the outcome would be decided in a flash. Clang! Clang! At this moment, the seventh swordsman took out the swords on his back. Whoosh! 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 At the same time, they swung their swords with tacit understanding, and 7 rays of sword light tore through space with peerless force. It was as if the 7 of them had become one person. They unsheathed their weapons and attacked in unison. There was not the slightest bit of disharmony. Not bad, Elder Shur said with satisfaction. This year's 7th swordsman was stronger than the previous ones. When he was promoted to an elder, he would definitely be able to carry the banner of the sword sect. The experts of the older generation would eventually retire or fall one day. The glory of the sect would still have to be inherited and continued by the younger generation of disciples. Whoosh! 7 streaks of sword chi swept over, creating friction with the space, causing it to distort. So strong! As expected of a sword cultivator. If the 7 of them attack together, their power won't be any weaker than a king. Everyone exclaimed. Looking at the Sect of All Time's disciple again, he saw that he was still standing in the same spot, as if he hadn't made any moves. Knowing that she was no match for him, she chose to give up. They could finally see a disciple of the Sect of All Times being defeated. The experts from the Eastern Radiant State laughed. Clang! At that moment, Zhou Hong casually placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and unsheathed it. His wrist shook in the void, and streaks of sword chi spread out. There were so many of them that it was as if there was an inescapable net. Elder Shur's eyes widened. That was because the Sect of All Time's disciple could attack 1,000 times in a single breath. What did that mean? To explain it in the simplest way, only a sword king, and a high-grade sword king at that, could do it. Bam! Bam! The densely packed sword chi bombarded the 7 streaks of sword chi like cannonballs, instantly shattering them into pieces. More sword lights flew past the 7 disciples of the Sword Control Saint sect and slowly disappeared in the void. It was like a firework that froze the most beautiful scene in a few seconds. Clang! Zhou Hong casually sheathed his sword. From the moment he unsheathed his sword to the moment he sheathed it, his face remained calm. Pht! Pht! The 7th swordsman, who was standing on the opposite side, was instantly covered in sword wounds. The size and depth of each sword wound was just right. They only cut through his clothes and did not hurt his skin. Not bad, Jun Changshao praised. He could release so many sword chi in one breath and control it so that it did not hurt the enemy. His control of the sword Dao was terrifying. Even he, who relied on the aptitude fluid to raise his sword Dao, might not be able to do that. Nonsense. Zhou Hong was obsessed with the sword Dao. Jun Changshao relied on cheating to raise his sword Dao and did not spend time comprehending it. Naturally, he could not be compared to Zhou Hong. The 7 Sword Saint sect disciples stood rooted to the ground, dumbfounded. How could they not know that the other party had shown mercy? Otherwise, they would definitely be corpses that were still warm at this moment. You won. The 7 of them sheathed their swords and turned to leave. Zhou Hong also left the martial arts practice field. His heart was still calm, without any ripples. His goal was not to win, but to exchange pointers with a fellow practitioner, and then comprehend a more profound sword Dao. Then, did he comprehend it after this battle? Yes, but he could not say it. Ding! Ding! As the 7th swordsman left the martial arts practice field, a notification sounded in his ears again. Jun Changshao said, "Who else?" The martial artists of the Eastern Haozhou were silent. Even the 7th swordsman of the Sword Saint sect was defeated so easily. They did not think that their own disciples had the strength to fight. Since no one is fighting. Jun Changshao looked at Cheng Huixin and said indifferently, "Then we can only go for the finale." The number of people who had completed the epic mission had increased by a lot. He estimated that it had almost reached the maximum level, so he might as well go straight to the main topic. Xiao Ziji! Jun Changshao shouted, "Fight!" Stomp! Xiao Ziji took a step forward and stood on the martial arts practice field. During this period of crazy cultivation, his body was even more muscular. Even with the hidden cultivation technique suppressing his cultivation, he unintentionally exuded a strong aura. He is Xiao Ziji, the one whose marriage was broken off by Murong Xian. This child's appearance and temperament are not bad. Even the daughter of the Murong family did not like him. She has high standards. I heard that a few years ago, this Xiao family's direct descendants' spiritual root and cultivation were all gone. I see. No wonder she went to break off the engagement. Ignoring the discussions of the crowd, Xiao Ziji raised his head and looked at the plaque engraved with Lily Holy Sect in the main hall. He said, Murong Xian, I'm here to fulfill the 3-year promise. 3 years ago, he had made an agreement with that woman in the sect. He had been waiting for this day to come. What he had lost before, he would take it back today. Whoosh, a graceful figure flew over with a mysterious movement technique and landed on the martial arts practice field like a dancing butterfly. Murong Xian was dressed in clean and neat clothes today, and her figure was perfectly outlined. However, her dark eyes revealed a complicated expression. This girl looks pretty good. Everyone looked at Xiao Ziji and shook their heads. What a perfect couple, but in the end, they would meet on the battlefield. It was really fate. Today. Xiao Ziji looked at Murong Xian and said word by word, you and I will end our grudge. Chapter 651. The grudge between Xiao Ziji and Murong Xian was not because of the marriage, but because of the humiliation and dignity that the Lily Holy Sect had brought to the Xiao family. Men could let bygones be bygones in some things, but they had to be serious in this aspect. Now that all the forces were present, Xiao Ziji wanted to defeat Murong Xian fair and square, to prove to the second-rate sects that he was not that bad. Whoosh whoosh. A powerful aura spread out and instantly enveloped the martial arts practice field. Xiao Ziji did not use the hidden cultivation technique to suppress his realm, but released his true strength. Martial King. An expert exclaimed, this guy is a martial king. What? All the martial artists from the various sects and forces widened their eyes. Your reaction is quite big. Jun Changxiao said. It was not that the martial artists had a big reaction, but it was very rare to reach the martial king level in his early 20s. I heard that there is a disciple called Yixingchen in the sect of all times who has reached the martial king level. I didn't expect Xiao Ziji to be at this level too. Some time ago, Yixingchen had continuously challenged the geniuses of the mortal class to fight and reach the top of the mortal class as quickly as possible, which caused quite a stir. News about his cultivation had long been spread. A 5th-rate sect actually has 2 martial king level disciples, it's unbelievable. Xiao Ziji's eruption of martial king cultivation shocked all the martial artists. However, they did not know that the hundreds of sect of all times disciples present all had martial king cultivation. If they were to reveal all of it, wouldn't it be scary? Jun Changxiao would not allow the disciples to reveal all of their cultivation, because it would be too shocking. When they came, they had also specially instructed that if the opponent was not very strong, they must suppress their cultivation and fight. Even if they had to make it look like they were fighting someone of a higher level, they must not reveal their martial king level cultivation. Of course. It was not to keep a low profile, nor was it to pretend to be weak. It was to tell the Lily Holy Sect that his disciple's cultivation was not high on the surface, but he could also torture your disciple until he could not take care of himself. This guy is so evil. It was unknown whether the Lily Holy Sect had been affected or not. However, the forces of the Eastern Vast State had been dealt a blow, because they had sent out 10 disciples in succession, but none of them could defeat a single disciple of the sect of all times. Xiao Ziji's eruption of martial king cultivation shocked many. Murong Xian was also very surprised. She did not expect him to have the same cultivation realm 3 years later. Even so, she did not regret she made the decision made. If Murong Xian, Murong Xian, Murong Xians, Murong Xian, Murong Xian, and Murong and Murong. The most was Murong of Murong Su. She clearly remembered that when she went to the Xiao family a few years ago, this young man's face was pale and his cultivation was completely gone. He could be said to be trash among trash. Murong murong, murong. Murong murong murong. Murong murtos. Murong murong to murong. Murong murong. Murto murong murong murong. The disciples of the Lily Holy Sect who had followed Cheng Huixin to the Xiao family felt extremely complicated. Back then, when they went to the Xiao family, they had humiliated Xiao Ziji to his face. They thought that he was just a piece of trash and that it was only right for their junior sister to break off the engagement. But what about today? That man was standing upright in the martial arts practice field, releasing an aura that they could only look up to. It was simply the most blatant slap in the face. After Xiao Ziji's cultivation erupted, he was slowly regaining the dignity he had lost. Moreover, he was not alone. Behind him stood hundreds of fellow disciples and even the patriarch. They were all his strongest supporters. Today, he had to take back everything he had lost. Sect of all times, Xiao Ziji. Xiao Ziji announced his name, his voice like a loud bell, shocking the minds of the surrounding martial artists. Murong Xian said, Lily Holy Sect, Murong Xian. Whoosh whoosh. As soon as she finished speaking, a strong aura rose from her body and spread in all directions, crazily clashing with the aura released by Xiao Ziji. She's also a martial king. Many martial artists exclaimed. Although they were shocked when Murong Xian unleashed her martial king cultivation, it was still within their acceptable range. After all, she was a direct disciple of a second-rate sect. To put it bluntly, Jun Changxiao's disciple was unimaginably strong. It was natural for a disciple of a high-level sect to be strong. A battle between kings will definitely be exciting. The eyes of many martial artists who had remained neutral flickered with passion. A battle between young kings could probably only be seen at the Dragon-Tiger battle for hegemony. It was truly a blessing to be able to witness it. Shua! Xiao Ziji took a large step forward, his right fist was instantly enveloped in flames, and he punched out with the force of 100,000 kilograms. The heat from this punch was the anger that he had suppressed for many years. Today, he was finally able to unleash it completely. Fire Element Martial Cultivator. Previously, the Sect of all times already had a fire elementalist. He did not expect Xiao Ziji to also be a fire elementalist. Since when were martial artists who cultivated the 5 elements so worthless? Boom! Xiao Zuiji punched the air with his fist. Whoosh whoosh. The monstrous flames carried the anger that had been suppressed for many years. It seemed to have turned into a roaring tiger, mercilessly pressing down on the woman who had hurt him the most. The explosive power of a king-level martial artist could shake the space with just a wave of his hand. Buzz! Murong Xian's jade-like hands intertwined, instantly forming a defensive barrier in front of her. She's a water element martial cultivator. Water counters fire. She'll definitely be suppressed. Everyone discussed. Cheng Huixin and the people from the 100 Holy Sect laughed. Murong Xian was a water element martial cultivator. Naturally, they knew better than anyone else that since that guy was a fire element martial cultivator, he would definitely be suppressed by water. They were both martial kings. Their attributes were restrained. How could a disciple of the Sect of all times win? Boom! Just as everyone was discussing, the monstrous flames slammed onto the water barrier, instantly shattering it and evaporating it. All the martial artists were dumbfounded. The smiles on the faces of Cheng Huixin and the people from the 100 Holy Sect froze. Although the fire element was explosive, the water element was restrained. Now that it was suppressed, it meant that the disciple of the Sect of all times had a better understanding and control of the fire element than Murong Xian. Boom! Boom! Xiao Ziji's arm muscles bulged as he punched twice in the air. Whoosh whoosh. The scorching flames instantly condensed into 2 fists that pressed forward. An explosive aura shrouded the martial arts arena. The stone slabs gradually turned red under the high temperature. The martial artists who were closer to the arena could not withstand the heat and quickly retreated. This guy. His understanding of fire was really strong. Buzz. Buzz. Murong Xayan stabilized her body and intertwined her hands together. The water element poured out like a waterfall, forming layers of water defensive barriers in front of her. Such a smooth move showed that her understanding of the water element was also very strong. Boom! Boom! The two bursting fists slammed onto the water barrier, mercilessly shattering it again. Murong Xayan finally could not withstand it and staggered back a few steps. Her face became extremely ugly. This disciple of the Lily Holy Sect is at a disadvantage. Although the water element restrains the fire element, if one's understanding of the fire element is extreme, it can also restrain the water element. Moreover, Xiao Ziji's physical body seems to be extraordinary as well. He can also suppress her in terms of strength. If Murong Xayan doesn't have any trump cards, she has no chance of winning. All the martial artists were discussing. Although many of the martial artists from the eastern continent supported Murong Xayan, they could see from the short exchange that Xiao Ziji was undoubtedly stronger. Sigh. Jun Changxiao said, I thought it would be an evenly matched battle. I didn't expect the disciple of the Lily Holy Sect to be so weak. Everyone's mouth twitched. Brother, you're really arrogant. We're convinced. Chapter 652. Although the disciples of the sect of all times did not use their true strength, they were still martial kings, so it was normal for them to win against the disciples of the Eastern Haozhou sect. However, Xiao Ziji and Murong Xayan were at the same level, but after a few moves, he was still suppressed by the former. The battle between them had been prepared for 3 years. If it was a one-sided suppression, Jun Changxiao would be very disappointed. Humph, Qing Huixin said coldly, the battle has just begun, don't be happy too early. Hearing her words, Murong Xayan could still turn the tables. That was true. If the direct disciple of a second-rate sect did not have any trump cards, it would be a bit unreasonable. Huff huff, at that moment, Murong Xayan clasped her hands together, 2 rays of light flashed in her eyes, and her soft black hair fluttered without wind. Drip, drip. Rain dripped from the sky, causing everyone to be stunned. The sky was clear. Why was it raining out of the blue? Be careful. At that moment, Jun Changxiao shouted loudly. Everyone looked over, only to see that guy with a serious face said, It's raining, collect the clothes. Everyone rolled their eyes. Walla walla. The rain was getting heavier, and all the martial artists used their spiritual energy to block it. However, the martial artists with low cultivation were dumbfounded, because they could not stop the rain from penetrating their spiritual energy. After a while, many people were drenched like drowned rats. This is profound spirit water. A martial artist said. There were many types of fire element, and there were many types of water element. Profound spirit water was one of them, and its quality had reached the sacred level. Profound spirit water had a strong penetrating power. Even if the martial artists used their spiritual energy, they could not block it. Tsk tisk. Jun Changxiao said, You do have some ability. Murong Xayan's profound spirit water had the effect of dripping water to penetrate stone, but it could not do anything to Xiao Ziji, because the rain was evaporated by the scorching flames in an instant. This is your trump card? He said proudly. Murong Xayan did not say anything, and made a complicated hand seal. The rain that fell from the sky instantly gathered together, forming a huge water column, like a dragon roaring. It was not over yet. Whoosh! Whoosh! Schwa! Murong Xayan's handprint was still being performed, and more water columns were condensing in the air. In just a moment, 9 flood dragons, which looked like they had come out of the sea, had gathered and pressed over from all directions. At that moment, as his water attribute increased, the surrounding heat was suppressed and gradually returned to normal. Huff 9 water pillars that were like flood dragons, carrying with them a power that could pierce through everything, causing all the martial artists present to turn solemn. This was definitely a high-level water-type martial skill. Cheng Huixin sneered. His disciple had used the saint-grade martial technique that he had painstakingly found for her. She would definitely be able to severely injure her opponent. However, what made her and the other martial artists stunned was, just as the 9 flood dragons were about to attack, Xiao Zuiji actually retracted his flames and stood there proudly, a hint of disdain appearing between his brows. What did that mean? Could it be that he knew he was no match for the profound spirit water and gave up on resisting? Ta! At this moment, Xiao Ziji took a step forward. His exposed muscles suddenly bulged, and he put on a defensive posture. An expert said in surprise, not relying on his fire attribute to defend, is he going to resist with his physical body? Isn't he a little too bold? Although the Lily Saint Sect's disciple's water martial skill is very strong, with his understanding of flames, he should be able to resist. Now that he has given up this advantage, he will only fall into an absolute passive state. Many martial artists found it hard to understand Xiao Ziji's approach, and they could only give an evaluation he was courting death. Morong Xian frowned slightly. She suddenly waved her hands, and majestic water attribute spiritual energy poured into the 9 water columns, gathering an even stronger force. Jun Changshao and the Sect of All Time's disciples laughed. In their opinion, Xiao Ziji's strength was not the fire attribute, but his strong physical defense. Even without any support, it was easy to resist so many water martial skills. That was right. Such a weak opponent, it was too easy to defeat her. He could use all kinds of methods to let her experience despair. Whoosh whoosh, the first water column blasted over in the blink of an eye. Xiao Zui stepped on the ground and spread out his arms. His spiritual energy spread out and formed a thin layer of defensive air wall. Boom! The dragon-like water column slammed into the wall of spiritual energy, and ripples instantly spread out in the training field. All the martial artists widened their eyes. After Xiao Ziji took the hit, he still stood in the same place, not moving at all. They were sure that this guy had only used his spiritual energy and did not use any defensive martial skills. It was too shocking to take it so easily. Whoosh whoosh, on the other side, another water column blasted over. Xiao Ziji stood in the same place, raised one hand, and directly caught the attack. Although the impact was very strong, he was still as steady as Mount Tai. Boom! 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 At this moment, the remaining water columns blasted over from different directions. Xiao Ziji's legs did not move at all, and his hands moved continuously, blocking the water columns. After all 9 moves, all the martial artists' jaws dropped. Xiao Ziji was still standing proudly, not moving at all, like a 10,000-year-old tree on the training field. Oh my god! Such a powerful water-type martial skill did not make the disciple of the Sect of All Times take a step back. This kid's physical body is extremely terrifying. Even if it were a high-grade martial king, it would be impossible for him to remain unmoved after receiving 9 moves. Terrifying, terrifying. Experts from all walks of life commented on Xiao Zuiji's performance. They had enough recognition for this young man. Spiritual energy could be cultivated at any time, but after breaking through to a certain level, it would be difficult for the physical body to have a substantial breakthrough. For the disciple of the Sect of All Times to be able to train to such a level, he must have gone through unimaginable hardships. Yes. In order to build his physical body, Xiao Ziji had sweated too much and suffered too much. It was because he was too crazy that he could have such a rock-solid defense. How is this possible? Murong Xian's eyes were filled with disbelief. A saint-level water-type martial skill combined with a saint-level martial skill was actually blocked by his bare hands, and he did not retreat. She could not accept this. If this is your strongest trump card, then I'm very disappointed, Xiao Ziji said indifferently. Murong Xian said, I didn't expect you to be so strong in just 3 years. Xiao Ziji looked at Cheng Huixin, at the disciple of the Lily Holy Sect who had once appeared in the Xiao family and humiliated him, and said, They probably did not expect that the person who had wantonly trampled on them back then would have such strength now. Cheng Huixin and the other disciples were all silent. They are right. Xiao Ziji said, you, Murong Xian, are a proud daughter of heaven. I, Xiao Ziji, am a piece of trash, not worthy of you. However, he clenched his fist and said word by word, today, I will let everyone know that even a proud daughter of heaven is nothing in front of a piece of trash like me. Chapter 653. Phew! Xiao Ziji's body once again erupted with scorching flames, and then he rushed over with the cloud steps, and angrily shouted, red sky raging flame cut. Crack 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 as he stomped on the ground, the floor instantly crumbled. Whoosh whoosh! Flames erupted from his body and gathered in mid-air, forming a ferocious slash of flames. He used his martial arts skills, he was serious. The temperature that had already cooled down, with Xiao Ziji's complete eruption, became hot again, and the pouring rain came to an abrupt stop. Under the absolute flame, any water element was useless. Not good. Murong Xian's face changed slightly. Buzz! Buzz! Psionic energy erupted, the space rippled, and a water curtain-like defensive barrier condensed. 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers, boom! 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 The red sky raging flame cut suddenly slashed down, shattering all the barriers like a hot knife through butter. Thump! 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 Murong Xian suffered a backlash and couldn't control her body to retreat, her entire face was extremely pale. However, the remaining power of the red sky raging flame cut did not diminish, and without any defense, she could only watch helplessly. It's over. All the powerhouses shook their heads. Boom! The ground on the training field trembled, showing deep and black flame marks. To everyone's surprise, Murong Xian stood weakly at the edge and was not hit by the scorching flame cut. That's not right. In that situation just now, she shouldn't be able to escape. Xiao Ziji retracted the flame and said expressionlessly, you lost. Plop! Murong Xian finally couldn't support herself and sat on the hot floor, her hair scattered, her face weak and pale. A moment later, after recovering some strength, she said bitterly, I lost. Ding! Disciple Xiao Ziji defeated Murong Xian of the Lily Holy Sect, the epic mission, 6, is completed, and the settlement is in progress. When Murong Xian said the words I lost, Jun Changshao heard a notification. This was definitely the sound of nature. Jun Patriarch had already prepared himself, waiting for the reward after the settlement, and he was very much looking forward to the reward of Shi Wu's mission that was suppressed. More importantly, once Shi Lu completed his mission, he would be able to break through to the Emperor stage. Everyone in the Lily Holy Sect was silent. Cheng Huixin was so angry that her hands trembled violently. Murong Xian was the disciple he was most proud of. All these years, he had spent countless resources and energy to nurture her. He never thought that she would lose to Xiao Ziji. The most unacceptable thing was, and he was the guy who had once presided over the annulment of the engagement. Cheng Huixin's old face was completely smashed. She didn't even look human anymore. Elder Cheng. Jun Changshao said, now you should know who's not worthy of whom, right? I'll give you another few slaps. Does it hurt? Cheng Huixin clenched her fists tightly. Her turbid eyes were filled with anger. Master. Murong Xian said weakly, sorry to disappoint you. Humph. Cheng Huixin angrily flicked her sleeves and left. Murong Xian. Xiao Ziji said indifferently, the grudge between you and me is over. From now on, we will go our separate ways and never come into contact with each other again. In fact, he could have seriously injured Murong Xian when he used the red sky raging flame cut, but in the end, he pulled back his hand and slammed it on the floor. It wasn't that he couldn't bear to do it. Instead, when the flames were about to descend, Murong Xian suddenly gave up all her defenses and transmitted her voice to Xiao Zuiji, Xiao Zuiji, it was my ignorance that hurt you back then. Today, I will pay you back with interest. These words, it was as if she could resist it with her defenses. No one knew what Xiao Ziji was thinking at that moment. He manipulated the red sky raging flame cut, and slammed it on Murong Xian's back, but it didn't cause any harm to her. He didn't come here to prove how great he was, but to take back the dignity he had lost. In front of the Lily Sacred Sect's main hall, under the witness of all the martial artists of the various provinces, defeating Murong Xian was equivalent to taking back everything. Seriously injuring her? That would only make him look petty. The disciples of the sect of all times are really strong. From the moves he used just now, he's definitely not an ordinary martial king. Although the battle had ended, it didn't stop the martial artists from discussing. At that moment, the importance of the sect of all times in everyone's hearts rose sharply with Xiao Ziji's victory. This sect had only risen for a short period of time, and their disciples could already crush the disciples of second-rate sections. If they continued to grow, their future would be unimaginable. City Lord Ding. Mu Changhong cupped his hands and said, "My province's sect has embarrassed itself." At first, he didn't have any hope. In the end, Jun Patriarch's disciple gave him a huge surprise, and his mood was extremely good. The corner of Ding Lingchuan's mouth twitched slightly. He thought that he was going to win, but he didn't expect that his province's forces would lose so badly. Even the Lily Sacred Sect's most valued direct disciple was defeated. Shameful, too shameful. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have sent the invitation letter. He called Mu Changhong over to see how he would be slapped in the face, but in the end, he was the one who was slapped in the face. This was extremely tragic. The various forces of the Eastern Haozhou who came to support the Lily Sacred Sect had collectively become mute. The facts proved that it was useless to have many people cheering for them. What really mattered was strength. Everyone. Jun Changshao glanced at the martial artists of the various sects of the Eastern Haozhou and said, "Who else wants to fight?" The various sects fell silent. Even the Lily Sacred Sect's king-class disciple had lost. They already knew their own limits. No one wants to fight. Jun Changshao said, "I'll go home for the new year first. All disciples, listen up." He said loudly, "Let's return to the sect." Yes. All the disciples shouted in unison. Their powerful voices shook the ancient sect. The martial artists of the Eastern Haozhou were powerless. They could only watch as the arrogant and despotic Jun Changshao left with a group of disciples. This time, not only did Xiao Ziji prove himself with his strength, but he also allowed the sect of all times to gain enough prestige. When the news spread in the martial arts world, it would definitely cause a new round of heated discussion. At that time, the sect of all times would also gain the recognition of all the martial artists. It would also let them deeply realize that this newly risen sect already had the strength to dominate a region. 3 years ago, they were unknown. 3 years later, they could compete with second-rate sections. This speed of growth was amazing. The dignity that Xiao Ziji had once lost was taken back openly. The sect had shown enough strength. It could be said that they had killed 2 birds with 1 stone. However, the best thing had just begun. Jun Changshao walked down the mountain, and a notification sounded in his ears. Ding! A sect disciple has defeated a set target and met the requirements. Epic mission completed. Completion rate, 200%. Host has received 20,000 contribution points. Ding! Sect contribution points, 33743200000. Ding! Contribution points overflow. Another 20,000 contribution points. It was simply too awesome. Jun Changshao was expressionless. There were no ripples in his heart because he was still waiting for the next mission completion reward. Ding! Congratulations to Host for completing Epic Mission 5. Host has received Supreme Grade Aptitude Modification Liquid X5, High Grade True Yang Sword Formula X1, High Grade Cloud Piercing Knife Formula X1, Middle Grade Black Iron Shield Formula X1, Experience Talisman X2. Ding! Congratulations to host for completing Epic Mission 6. Host has received Saint-Grade Aptitude Modification Liquid X2, High-Grade Spirit Gathering Pill Formula X1, Beginner-Grade Soul Shaping Pill Formula X1, Hard to Stop Knife Modification Stone X1, Experience Talisman X2. The notifications sounded in his ears. Jun Changshao, who was walking on the road, suddenly stopped and squatted down. He covered his entire face with his hands and his body trembled slightly. Patriarch Jin Dejuan said, "What's wrong with you?" "It's coming again." Li Qingyang said. "It's coming again." Jin Dejuan was confused. Ha ha ha, ah ha ha ha. Jun Changshao suddenly burst into unbridled laughter, startling Elder Jin so much that he almost jumped up. Li Qingyang said, calm down, calm down." He, Su Xiaoma, and the others were used to the patriarch's sudden laughter, so they were not surprised. Chapter 654. The 2 epic missions were completed and he received a total of 40,000 contribution points. The rewards were also various aptitude elixirs and high-grade and middle-grade weapon and equipment formulas. It was extremely rich. The best part was, he was also given 4 experience talismans. One of these could increase his level by 1 level. 4 of them would increase his level by 4. The completion of the epic mission would increase his level. Now that he had 2 missions, he might increase his level by a small level. If he used the experience talismans, he might reach the 8th or 9th grade Wu Huang in minutes. No, no. Jun Changshao's little heart was beating fast. That was the feeling of being in love. Elder Zhen. He stopped smiling and said, quickly set up an isolation array nearby. Although Zhen Dejuan was confused, since the patriarch had given the order, he did not hesitate to find an open space and took out the array flag. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, in an instant, an extremely high-level isolation array was formed. Elder Zhen had been studying the Wonder 32 formations during this period. His understanding of the array was getting stronger and stronger. According to his own deduction, breaking through to the Formation Emperor was just around the corner. You guys wait outside. Yes. Jun Changshao immediately stepped into the array. What was this guy doing? After the reward, the next step was to increase his level. Breaking through to the Emperor level would definitely be more shocking than breaking through to the King level. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, it was better to keep a low profile. Come on. Inside the isolation array, Jun Changshao closed his eyes and opened his arms. Whoosh whoosh, as expected, a majestic aura suddenly emerged from his body. The psionic energy in the 2 spiritual cores suddenly boiled. At that moment, Jun Changshao felt as if his soul was floating and merging with heaven and earth. He peered at the attributes of heaven and earth that could not be seen with the naked eye. From the king level to the emperor level. Not only the attributes, but also the soul. At this moment, Jun Changshao was like an unrestrained fish, swimming in the endless sea of martial arts. This strange feeling lasted for a long time before his soul slowly withdrew. Whoosh! Jun Changshao suddenly opened his eyes. 2 rays of light flashed and disappeared. His body instantly erupted with a powerful aura. Now! Clenching his hands, he said, I am the Emperor. Huff, the aura emanating from his body became even more intense and gradually solidified. In an instant, an incomparably powerful and oppressive Qi domain was formed within the formation. If a martial artist of the same realm was present and felt Jun Changshao's erupting Qi domain, they would definitely widen their eyes. This was because the oppressive force produced was far too strong. It was not something that someone who had just broken through should have. Wu Huang's Qi domain was determined by the strength of the spiritual energy in his spirit core. Once Jun Changshao, who had dual cores, unleashed his Qi domain would naturally be extraordinary. It was no exaggeration. The strength of his current realm of Qi was comparable to that of Wu Huang, who was at the level of 5th or 6th pin. Qi domain could be used to intimidate low-level martial artists, but it was not an absolute suppression. For example, the disciples of the sect of all times had gone through all kinds of tempering in the sect. Especially when they had to endure 10 times the pressure on the first level of the training tower, Wu Huang, who was at the beginner level, might not be able to suppress it immediately. Jun Changxiao's body once again erupted with a powerful and sharp aura. It was Wu Huang's breakthrough just now. This time, it was a breakthrough to the Sword Emperor. Perhaps because the rewards were given out one after another, the signs of advancement were not released at the same time like the last time in Qingyang City. The advantage of this was that it did not form the momentum of sword martial arts to break through the clouds. Otherwise, even with the isolation array, it might not be able to suppress it. At that time, the entire Falling Star continent would know that both sword martial arts and human martial arts were called emperors. Low-key. It was exactly what Jun Patriarch wanted. Outside, Li Qingyang and the others were waiting. Zhou Hong, who was leaning against a big tree, frowned slightly. He looked at the isolation array and seemed to feel a powerful sword force erupting inside. Junior brother Xiao. Su Xiaoma placed a hand on Xiao Ziji's shoulder. He smiled and said, "Are you relieved now? I thought that the personal disciples of the Lily Holy Sect were amazing. It turns out that they are only a so-so." Li Fei said. It was not Murong Xian. It was Xiao Ziji who was too strong. To be exact. Under Jun Changxiao's meticulous training, the disciples of the sect of all times were all monsters. Xiao Ziji did not say anything. He turned around to look at the mountain gate of the Lily Holy Sect, and muttered, "Everything is over." The grudge between him and Murong Xian was over. From now on, they would go their separate ways and never cross paths again. Who? Xiao Ziji took a deep breath, put down what he needed to put down, and laughed. "Senior brother Su, let's drink to our heart's content when we go back." Su Xiaoma said, "With your alcohol tolerance, you still dare to drink to your heart's content with senior brother. It's not a problem to put you down." "Heh, you sure talk big." All right, after we go back, you and I will fight for 300 rounds. If I don't drink you under the table, I won't be called Su Xiaoma. How boring would it be if it's just two people? Count me in." Li Fei laughed. Li Qingyang laughed. "Junior brother Xiao has untied the knot in his heart. The patriarch will definitely hold a celebration when we return." "What is it again?" "Party." Su Xiaoma said. "Yes, a celebration party." Li Qingyang said, "When the time comes, there will be plenty of wine for you guys to fight. Does second senior brother want to join as well?" No, I can't hold my liquor. You guys can play." Yi Xingqian, who was sitting on the huge rock, said indifferently, "Childish. He didn't fight when he came to challenge the Lily Holy Sect." It wasn't that Jun Changxiao didn't want him to fight, but that bullying the disciples of the various sects in the Eastern Haozhou was enough for the mission. There was no need to bite the Lily Holy Sect. It was fine to step on a second-rate sect to earn prestige, but he couldn't use too much strength to directly step on them. It was just right to stop. This was all thanks to him discovering the secret of Shi Lu's mission. Otherwise, with Jun Changxiao's character of having to complete the mission, he would have probably fought all the disciples of the Lily Holy Sect. Inside the isolation formation, the sharp momentum began to converge, and everything returned to calm. Jun Changxiao broke through from the Sword King level to the Sword Emperor level. The birth of a Sword Emperor would cause a huge commotion. Fortunately, the isolation formation from the Chimen 32 formations suppressed it very well. Continue. Jun Changxiao said, "Break through to a higher level." However, after waiting for more than 10 minutes, his realm was still at the Emperor level. He didn't hear the prompt that his realm had advanced to the second stage at all. Breakthrough. He collapsed. The system said angrily, "After breaking through the Sword King level, the host didn't level up. Don't even think about the Emperor level." That's right. After completing the fourth epic mission, he only broke through to the King level and didn't level up. This time was different. Shirlu and Shirlu completed the missions together. No matter what, there should be a small realm upgrade, right? Even the first stage would be fine. Wash up and go to sleep, the system said. Jun Changshao didn't believe it and continued to wait. In the end, he waited for another hour, but there was still no movement. Sigh. He shook his head and took out an experience talisman. Since completing the 2 epic missions couldn't promote a small realm upgrade, he could only rely on this thing. Paw! He crushed the experience talisman. The 2 spirit cores in his dantian gathered a huge amount of spiritual energy. Come on. Jun Changshao closed his eyes and said like a little boy, break through. Huff, huff. The spiritual energy in the spirit cores kept expanding and then being tempered. However, when everything stopped, Jun Changshao was still at the Emperor level and hadn't broken through. What's going on? The host has become the Sword King level and the Martial King level needs more spiritual energy. 1 experience talisman can't achieve a breakthrough. Damn it! Jun Changshao squatted on the ground and pulled his hair with both hands. Just now, he was thinking that after completing the 2 epic missions, with the help of the experience talisman, he could reach the 8th or 9th stage. It turned out that the ideal was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. Chapter 655. Jun Changshao, who had reached the Sword and Martial Emperor, needed a huge amount of energy to raise his grade. The experience talisman rewarded by the mission could not be crushed to raise his grade by 1. Sigh. Jun Patriarch shook his head and crushed the 2nd experience talisman. Only then did he successfully break through to the 2nd rank. Paw! Paw! The other 2 were also crushed, and his realm advanced from the 2nd rank to the 3rd rank. The 4 experience talisman only increased by 2 ranks, which made Jun Changshao very depressed. The system said, for a normal Emperor stage expert, it would take decades to raise his grade. The host should be satisfied. That's true. Although it was harder to raise his realm than before. But he still had the system and various missions. As long as he was rewarded with a few more experience talisman, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Thinking of this, Jun Patriarch suddenly felt refreshed, and then looked inside his dantian. After breaking through to the Emperor stage, although the 2 crystal cores were smaller than before, the psionic energy they contained was extremely majestic. Especially when there was an additional attribute that looked like clouds and mist out of thin air. This was the energy needed for flight. Any martial artist who broke through to the Emperor stage would condense and thus have the ability to fly. To be exact. With this kind of energy, one could get rid of the shackles of heaven and earth and fly freely in the sky like a bird. That was why it was called the power of flight. As his level increased, the power of flight would become stronger, and his speed would also increase a lot. Jun Changshao was not in a hurry to test his flight. After all, he had the armed combat wings before and had already experienced the pleasure of flying faster than others. What he cared more about now was the various formulas rewarded by the system. Schwa! It merged into the space ring. The mission reward formulas were all placed quietly. With a thought, they were automatically matched. A lot of new weapons and equipment were born in the forging pavilion. Jun Changshao casually tapped on the True Yang sword and immediately listed out the required refining materials. The material of this sword was not much different from the cold light sword. Moreover, he could refine one. The members of the procurement hall had been actively purchasing. As long as there were ores outside, they would buy most of them, so the stock was very rich. This was the benefit of preparing for a rainy day. Otherwise, even if he had a high-grade weapon formula, he would have to spend a lot of effort to find ores to refine it. Ding! Jun Changshao focused on refining. Then, he looked at the cloud-piercing saber, black iron shield, and other equipment. Unfortunately, he lacked certain ores, so he couldn't forge them. When I go back, I have to ask the purchasing hall to speed up the purchasing process. Jun Changshao naturally hoped to mass-produce the high-grade weapons produced by the system and equip his disciples with them to increase their strength. He opened the pill pavilion. Needless to say, high-grade qi-gathering pills were definitely very suitable for cultivation. What Jun Changshao was most concerned about was the elementary-grade soul-molding pill. He said, "This item is only one word away from the body-molding pill. Could it have the effect of molding one's soul?" "Smart," the system said. Jun Changshao said, "We also need to mass-produce them so that each disciple can have one." The effects of the body-shaping pill went without saying, and the soul-shaping pill would definitely have miraculous effects as well. Inside the spatial ring, there was also a fist-sized rock. It was surrounded by fluorescent light and looked very strange. Jun Changshao asked, "What is this?" "Sealing blade, modify soul stones," the system replied. Jun Changshao said in surprise, "It can modify the sealing blade?" "Yes." "How do I use it?" "Fuse your soul into it." Jun Changshao released his soul force and spread it out. The moment it touched the stone, it seemed to be melted by high temperature and turned into a sticky liquid. The system said, "Quickly fuse with the sealing blade." Shwa! Jun Changshao took the sealing blade and then manipulated the melted liquid to fuse with it. Gulp! Gulp! The liquid enveloped the entire blade and then turned into bubbles. This blade that was given by the first wish was a divine weapon in the lower realm, but when Jun Changshao broke through to the king realm, it seemed to be powerless. Especially when facing the half-step Wusheng, it completely lost any value, so he threw it into the cold palace and didn't want to use it again. The level was getting higher and higher. Many martial arts equipment were destined to be abandoned or replaced by new ones. For example, among the martial arts that he bought before, only self-chop was useful. Martial arts such as rupturing fist were no longer suitable for the needs of disciples above the master realm. "I hope this modification can give the hard blade a new life," Jun Changshao whispered. Although he had the armament wings and the body of holy flame, he still felt that it was not safe enough. If this blade could become strong again, he would undoubtedly be more at ease. Half an hour later, the hard blade absorbed all the strange liquid and quietly suspended in front of Jun Changshao. Although from the spatial ring, the size and specifications of the blade were normal, as for its power, he would only know when it was pulled out. Shwa! Jun Changshao raised his hand and grabbed the hilt. Although it was not out of the sheath, he could feel a heavier aura, so he concluded, "Old friend, after the modification, your power should be stronger." Wang! The hard blade trembled slightly, as if responding to its master. "Come!" Jun Changshao came out of the spatial ring and raised his hand, "Let me see your evolved body." Shio, the space shook. The heroic Jun Changshao's mouth twitched violently. Because the hard blade in his hand was much smaller than before the modification, it could be described as an embroidery needle. This is a blade after all. Or the Ru Yi Jingu Bang. Whatever. Jun Changshao waved his hand and pinched the opening talisman between his fingers. Paw! He crushed it. 2 fingers quickly clamped the hilt that couldn't be any smaller, but he couldn't pull it out no matter how hard he tried. "Don't waste your energy." The system said, "The modified hard blade requires a new opening talisman to be unsealed." Gah! Jun Changshao stood still. After a while, his mouth twitched. "You mean, I can still use it before the modification, but after the modification, I can't use it?" "Correct." The system said. "Can you come out of the thought sea?" "I want to beat you up." "I also want to beat you up, but I can't." "Come out." "Come in." The host and the system began their daily bickering. The hard blade had been modified. As for its power, there was no new opening talisman, so it was temporarily unknown. However, Jun Changshao could also speculate. This kind of modification was nothing more than an increase in power, and that kind of suppression would also increase. At that time, it would definitely be able to bind the Emperor stage, the half-step Wusheng, and even Wusheng. As long as he got a new opening talisman, he could do whatever he wanted in the falling star continent. Awesome, super awesome. Jun Changshao walked out of the isolation array with a smile of exultation. He had seen all the reward items. Next, he would spend all the excess contribution points on the way back to the sect. An extra 20,000 points, great. The Patriarch's aura seems to be much stronger than before. When Jun Changshao walked out of the array, F4 of the Sect of all times, the Grand Elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace, and the others all noticed that the aura he unintentionally emitted was stronger than before. Before entering, he was a king stage, and after coming out, he was an emperor stage. How could he not be strong? Chapter 656. Let's go. Jun Changshao snapped his fingers and brought the disciples back to the sect. On the way, he opened the system store skillfully and considered what goods he should buy. From the looks of it, his realm had increased to the emperor level, and he had many more weapons and elixirs. He really didn't have any specific needs. However, the overflowing contribution points would be cleared after 24 hours. Even if he didn't need them, he had to create them. Jun Changshao secretly said, "The modified hard-to-keep blade can't be unsealed, which means that I still have no trump cards. I can consider buying a talisman of heaven and earth for emergencies." Even if his realm had increased, he still needed a reliable trump card to save his life at a critical moment. The talisman of heaven and earth that could increase one's cultivation was undoubtedly very suitable. As for the side effects of a year, with the Spacetime Secret Realm, it was not a problem at all. It was decided. Ding! The host has spent 10,000 contribution points and obtained Talisman of Heaven and Earth X1. It has been transferred to the Space Ring. Ding! Sect contribution points, 23743200000. After buying it, Jun Changshao looked at the goods and found that there was a small annotation on it. The content was, "This item is limited to 2 pieces." He had already accepted this kind of limited purchase. Not only was there no wave in his heart, but he also wanted to laugh. "I have a few thousand contribution points left. I'll buy it from the mid-tier store." Jun Patriarch had developed a habit. He had to save enough contribution points before he could feel at ease. It was this habit that allowed him to have enough contribution points to buy the Talisman of Heaven and Earth when the Supreme Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace came. Otherwise, how could he subdue him and clean the sect courtyard? Ding! Ding! A series of cumbersome prompts sounded. Sect Master Jun had a very good grasp of the situation. He had used up the remaining 3,000 plus contribution points. What did he buy? There were AK-47, AWM sniper rifles, and various levels of aptitude liquids. The higher the level of firearms, the harder it was to show its value, but the main thing was that it was cheap and could be equipped with the Wolf Rider Hull. At that time, the Wolf Rider Hull would ride the Hurricane Wolf and hold the AK-47, killing on the battlefield. The scene would be as beautiful as a painting. Screech, the cry of the Black Eagle of the Demon Ridge resounded in the sky of the eastern vast state. Awo! Awo! The disciples of the Sect of all times galloped across the land on their hurricane wolves, sometimes in a V-shape, sometimes in a straight line, looking very smug. Just as they left the eastern Haozhou's earth staircase, Jun Changshao suddenly stopped. He frowned as he looked at the dark forest in the distance. The disciples following behind him all stopped in their tracks. "Patriarch," Li Qingyang asked, "why did you stop?" "There's someone in the forest ahead." "Someone?" The Grand Elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace released his spiritual sense and discovered that there was indeed a group of black-robed martial artists in the forest. It was at least 700 or 800 meters away. He was actually able to spy on them. Wasn't the range of his spiritual senses a little too exaggerated? As the Grand Elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace, who was half a step away from Wusheng, his spiritual sense could easily extend to a distance of 1,000 miles. Naturally, his spiritual sense could also shrink to a distance of a few hundred miles. At this distance, even a peak martial king would not be able to compare. Now, Jun Changshao was able to spy on them even though they were 700 or 800 miles away. It was really unbelievable. That forest is filled with ferocious beasts. Maybe there are mercenaries hunting the ferocious beasts, Jun Dijuan said. No. Jun Changshao said, they're waiting for someone. Waiting for who? Waiting for us. Jun Dijuan looked confused. In this unfamiliar place, who would wait for us? Whoosh whoosh, at this moment, several streams of light flew over from the dark forest. Then, they hovered in the air and revealed 6 martial cultivators wearing strange masks. Li Qingyang and the others did not recognize them. However, Xiao Ziji and Yi Xingchen knew them. That was because they had been chased by 4 Wu Huang wearing the same masks when they had just come out of the Northwest He State's royal city. Judging from their auras, the 6 of them were obviously stronger than before. Especially the masked man standing at the front. His aura was very strong, as if he had merged with heaven and earth. He was either a peak Wu Huang or a half-step Wu Sheng. Jun Patriarch. A hoarse old voice came from the mask. My master wants to see you. Are you interested in accompanying me? Jun Changshao said, I'm in a hurry to return to the sect. I'm not interested in accompanying you. You almost kidnapped my disciple in the Northwest He State. I haven't settled the score yet. How dare you show up again? Do you think I'm magnanimous enough to let bygones be bygones? The masked man said, Jun Patriarch, I'm here to invite you today. You have to go whether you want to or not. Very domineering and arrogant. Whoosh! 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 At this moment, a large number of black-clothed martial cultivators hiding in the distant forest galloped over on wind-type ferocious beasts. There were more than 1,000 of them, all wearing strange masks. Roar! Roar! Angry roars sounded. In a short moment, this group of masked martial cultivators flew over and surrounded the hundreds of disciples of the sect of all times. The evil aura they emitted gathered together, causing people to tremble in fear. I'm so scared. Su Xiaoma pretended to be scared. Li Fei, Tian Qi, and the others grinned. Looking at the disciples of the sect of all times, even if they were surrounded by so many ferocious masked martial cultivators, not only were they not afraid, they were even emitting a strong fighting spirit. Many of them did not fight when they went to the Lily Saint sect. Now, a group of martial cultivators with ill intentions suddenly appeared. Naturally, they could vent it out. Jun Patriarch. The leading masked man said in a deep voice, if you don't want any disciples to die, it's best to follow me. This meant, if they did not cooperate, they would attack. Who are you? Jun Changshao touched his nose and asked. He could immediately order the disciples to fight, but he had to ask clearly if these masked fellows were from the Darkness sect. That person said, follow me to see the master, then you will know who we are. I won't say. Jun Changshao shrugged and said, I naturally won't go. Jun Patriarch. That masked man said coldly, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Elder. A person standing at the side said, this brat clearly doesn't want to go. Let's just attack. The other masked men agreed and gathered spiritual energy in their hands. I've drunk all the wine in the world, but I've never drunk a forfeit wine. I want to try it today. Jun Changshao laughed. These words were really despicable. The leading masked man raised his hand and said indifferently, if that's the case, then I'll let Jun Patriarch have a taste of this forfeit wine. Shwa! Shwa! Thousands of black-clothed masked men riding on fierce beasts leaped up one after another. They either took out their weapons or gathered their spiritual energy to attack. These people were very strong, and their average cultivation was at the peak of Wuzong. Moreover, there were even dozens of king-level S among them. To be able to send out such a force, it was hard to imagine how strong the force was. Shwa! Jun Changshao's eyes were cold and fierce, kill them all. Clang! Clang! The disciples of the sect of all times, who had long been eager to give it a try, all took out their weapons and welcomed the masked men with burning eyes. For a time, the sky was filled with a strong killing intent. Chapter 657. Boom! Boom! Su Xiaoma and Li Fei were the first to rush over. They gathered explosive spiritual energy under their feet and kicked the two black-clothed men away. Put on! Put on! The two masked men fell heavily on the ground. There were footprints on their chests. They were dead. This wasn't a spar, nor was it a drill. Therefore, Su Xiaoma and Li Fei didn't show any mercy. In the Lily Holy Sect, if the disciples of the sect of all times were to fight with no regard for their lives, the female disciples would use all kinds of methods to show how they would be killed instantly. Boom! Boom! On the other side, Yang Yuhua rushed over like a bull. Although she was attacked, her speed didn't decrease at all. Bam! In the end, he hugged a black-clothed man and pushed him forward, sending 4 or 5 black-clothed masked men flying. He was the number 2 meat shield of the sect. At this moment, it was vividly displayed. Boom! Boom! Long Xiang held the Overlord spear and fought with several enemies. Wherever the spear went, there would be a bloody storm. Puchi! Puchi! The sword flashed as if it was harvesting grass. Put on! Several black-clothed masked men fell together. Their heads rolled neatly on the ground. Trash! Yi Xingqian held the cold ray sword and his eyes were filled with disdain. Huff huff! At this moment, a king-level expert attacked from behind. The spiritual energy he gathered instantly turned into a palm as heavy as a mountain. Whoosh! Yi Xingqian suddenly turned around and his sword flashed. Puchi! A cold ray arrived first. The rank 1 martial king didn't even have the chance to dodge before his head was cut off. Fast, accurate, and ruthless. The enemies who were about to attack all stopped subconsciously when they saw this. Oh my god! A martial king was killed instantly. The disciples of the sect of all times were too scary. Don't be agitated, don't be agitated. However, this was the most normal way of doing things, because disciples like Li Qingyang and Xiao Zuiji were killing king-level martial artists with cold and ruthless moves. In a short period of time, a few hundred of the 1,000 masked men in black were killed by the disciples of the sect of all times. Among them, more than 10 king ranks died. Elder Wu Huang, who was hovering in the air, said, "These sect of all times disciples aren't simple. No wonder Master sent so many people." The leader of the masked men was also very surprised, but he still said indifferently, "You guys go." Yes. The 5 Wu Huangs slowly descended. Huff! A powerful aura filled the air and instantly enveloped the entire battlefield. With so many Emperor-level powerhouses activating their Qi domains at the same time, the resulting pressure was extremely strong. The disciples of the sect of all times were unable to control their bodies after a slight resistance. Huff huff! Right at this moment, an even thicker Qi field pressed down from the sky, clashing violently with the Qi fields formed by the 5 Wu Huang warriors. It was Jun Changshao who released the Qi domain. At this moment, he was standing on the Black Eagle of the Devil Ridge. He looked calm and at ease. The 5 Wu Huang warriors who were hit by the Qi domain were horrified. The Qi domain released by the patriarch of the sect of all times was far stronger than theirs. If they didn't release it together, they would definitely be defeated instantly. Wait! This guy can condense Qi domains? The leader of the masked martial artists was surprised. You're Wu Huang. Boom! Boom! The invisible 5 Qi fields were instantly destroyed. The 5 martial emperors were sent flying backward, spitting out blood one after another. The confrontation of Qi domains was similar to the internal strength of martial arts masters. Once defeated, the meridians would be damaged. Weak, Jun Changshao said. He had just broken through to emperor level, but he could use Qi domains to suppress 5 powerhouses of the same level. This was really awesome. Evil Saint Wu Ju and the Elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace were dumbfounded. They thought that Jun Changshao would send them to deal with the 5 Wu Huang warriors, but they were all injured by releasing Qi domains. And when did he break through to Emperor level? Just now. It was less than half an hour. The Qi domains of the 5 Wu Huang warriors were broken. Li Qingyang and the others were relieved and continued to fight with their opponents. Jun Changshao didn't use Qi domains to suppress his opponents because his disciples could kill them all without using his strength. Yes. Absolutely crushing. It would just take some time to kill them all. The leader of the masked martial artists in the sky could see that although they had more people, the gap between them and the disciples of the sect of all times was too big, so he immediately raised his hand. Whoosh! Whoosh! His subordinates received the order and retreated as soon as possible. They were full of confidence when they attacked, but when they fought with the disciples of the sect of all times, they were filled with despair. Especially, what made them fearful was, many people released the aura of a martial king during the battle. They didn't see the scene of hundreds of people releasing their martial king cultivation. Otherwise, they would be scared out of their wits. You think you can come and go as you please? Jun Changshao waved his hand and said, "Kill them all, don't leave a single one alive." Yes. The disciples shouted in unison, and then rushed over with their movement techniques. Puchi! Puchi! The masked martial artists in black who were too slow were instantly killed by the disciples of the sect of all times who were chasing after them. Those who ran far away couldn't escape because they would be caught up soon. After cultivating for so long, it was rare for them to experience real combat. The disciples of the sect of all times wouldn't end so quickly, so they had to chase them to the end. How dare you! At this moment, the masked martial artist in the sky shouted in a deep voice. A thick aura whizzed over and instantly pressed down on the disciples of the sect of all times. As expected. This guy was a half-step Wu Sheng. At this moment, a half-step Wu Sheng's aura also appeared behind Jun Changshao and instantly collided with the masked martial artist's aura. Such a strong Qi domain was naturally not released by Jun Patriarch but by the Supreme Elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace. He and the masked martial artists in black were both half-step Wu Sheng, so the Qi domain released was extremely strong. The space was compressed and instantly distorted. However, the disciples of the sect of all times were not affected and continued to chase after the martial artists who were escaping. Boom! Boom! Flowing light flashed and sword light flashed. The fleeing martial artists in black were killed one by one. To be honest, even if they sent another 2,000 or 3,000 martial artists, it would be difficult to cause any trouble to the hundreds of sect of all times disciples who were at the martial king level. They had been waiting here for a long time, but in reality, they were waiting for death. Whoosh! Whoosh! How could the 5 Wu Huang allow them to kill their subordinates wantonly, so they all rushed down when the Elder and the half-step Wu Sheng were fighting for the Qi domain. With their strength, it would be easy for them to kill the disciples of the sect of all times. However, before they flew down and attacked, the evil saint of 5 treasures blocked their way and said calmly, "Your opponent is me." One look and one sentence revealed a terrifying aura, which made the 5 Wu Huang's hair stand on end. This hunchbacked elder's strength should be at the martial emperor level. But for some reason, it made them feel that his strength was unfathomable. If they knew that standing in front of them was a senior from the evil sect, Wu Sheng from thousands of years ago, they would be so scared that their legs would tremble. Whoosh whoosh, the evil saint of 5 treasures waved his hand and a strange attribute spread out. It was as if dark clouds were pressing down, causing the area to become extremely dark. The 5 Wu Huang said in shock, "He is an evil cultivator." Chapter 658. When the evil saint of 5 treasures released his attributes, the other Wu Huang immediately realized that he was an evil cultivator. Especially when they felt the pressure coming down on them, an ominous feeling rose in their hearts. This person was very strong and very dangerous. Die! The evil saint of 5 treasures smiled coldly. The strange attributes came down like a dark cloud, and at the same time, it contained an extremely strong qi domain. Not good! The 5 Wu Huang shouted in fear. Under the suppression of the domineering qi domain, they couldn't move at all. They could only watch as the terrifying and gloomy power came down on them. No, desperate voices sounded in the sky, but it was useless. Bang! 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 Continuous explosions sounded in the sky. Li Qingyang and the others who were chasing after the deserters looked up and saw the sky full of minced meat and blood falling down like rain. Hiss! Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, and the others gasped. Those were 5 Wu Huang, but they were killed by the patriarch's servant in an instant. This was too shocking. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, 5 Wu Huang died just like that. It's a pity. The 5 Wu Huang were killed by the evil saint of 5 treasures. It was very powerful and cruel. This showed that even if he fell to the emperor level, he would still be the emperor level. Boom! On the other side, the great elder of the extreme coldness palace and the masked man who was competing in Qi domain had already won. The latter was slightly at a disadvantage and had to take a few steps back. Actually, he wasn't weak. It was mainly because the evil saint of 5 treasures had killed the 5 Wu Huang in an instant, which shocked him a lot. He couldn't calm himself down for a while and exposed his weakness. A battle between experts. Especially for this kind of half-step wusheng, a slight mistake was enough to determine the outcome. Puchi! Puchi! Below, the disciples of the sect of all times were still chasing after the fleeing masked men in black, and they killed them all in a short time. Li Qingyang led his junior brothers and started to skillfully loot the crates. Since the ancient times, not even a blade of grass would grow. Thousands of his subordinates and 5 Wu Huang were wiped out, and the half-step Wu Sheng became a general without an army. This speed was too fast, so fast that he couldn't accept it. Friends. Jun Changshao crossed his arms and said, I would like to invite you to my sect of all times for a chat. Are you interested? Those words sounded familiar. Wasn't it just what she said just now? She wanted him to change the meaning. Jun Changshao. The masked man in black said in a deep voice, You've killed so many of my people. In the future, this old man will definitely pay you back double. Whoosh! Space rippled, and he melted into it and disappeared. He had slipped away. The half-step Wusheng had already grasped the power of space. If he wanted to leave, it would be very difficult to stop him. In fact, the masked man might not be afraid of the extreme coldness palace's grand elder, but the evil saint of 5 ultimates was very strange, which made him very afraid, so he could only leave. His subordinates and the 5 Wu Huang did not return, which was very sad. To be honest, this unknown organization had already overestimated the sect of all times, directly sending a half-step sage and 5 Wu Huang. Unfortunately, Jun Changshao's 2 servants were very strong. Since they had come, they could only return with their halberds broken. The piled-up corpses gradually turned into ashes under the fire, and the interspatial rings on their bodies had already been taken away by Li Qingyang and the others. Jun Changshao was not in the mood to count the resources. He held his chin and muttered, Where did they come from? The first time, they sent 4 Wu Huang to Northwest He Prefecture, and the second time, they sent so many experts. He didn't think that the other party was an ordinary darkness sect. Master. Evil Saint of 5 Ultimates walked over with a strange mask and said, This mask is a bit familiar. Oh? Jun Changshao said, You've seen it before? No. Evil Saint of 5 Ultimates said, I've heard of it. This guy had lived for a long time and had just come out of the cemetery. Since he had heard of it, it meant that the organization wearing this kind of mask had existed for at least 3,000 years. Speak. Jun Changshao said. Evil Saint of 5 Ultimates said, I've heard that the Demon Emperor sect, the leader of the demon sects, had internal strife after the Demon Emperor fell. A group of experts left and luckily escaped the pursuit of the other sections. They then joined the Darkness Sect. If they were to take action, they would wear strange masks. There was no record of this in the ancient books. He only found some remnant ancient books by chance and learned about it. Jun Changxiao was silent for a while and said, "Could it be that the ones who have caused trouble for the sect of all times are the remnants of the Demon Emperor sect?" "It's hard to say." Evil Saint of Five Ultimates told him what he knew. As for whether it was true or not, it had been a long time. The remnants of the demon sect might have been eradicated by the other sections. Jun Changxiao rubbed his temples and said, "First they wanted to kidnap Sinner and Xingqian, and now they're inviting me. What's their purpose?" The system said, "The host sect is growing too fast. It's normal to be targeted." Jun Changxiao could understand this. But he couldn't accept that the other party was hiding in the dark and he had no information at all. The group of people that Evil Saint of Five Ultimates mentioned by Evil Saint of Five Ultimates also provided a little clue. He might as well follow this clue and investigate. Maybe he could gain something. Phew. Jun Changxiao stood up and said, "Return to the sect." Patriarch. Su Xiaomo pointed to the thousands of wind-type beasts that were trembling on the ground and said, "What should we do with them?" The mounts brought by the black-clothed masked men were quite fierce at first, but when the Black Eagle of the Demon Ridge released a little pressure, they were scared to death. Bring them back to the sect for training. The Wolf Rider Hall just happened to be lacking mounts. Although these wind-type beasts were not as good as the hurricane wolves, at least they could be used. It was unknown which force the masked men in black came from, but from the looks of it, they were definitely giving Jun Patriarch a big gift. Whoosh whoosh, the wind blew past the area where the battle had just occurred, as if nothing had happened. After a long time, the people of the 9 fourth-rate sects in the northeast Lu prefecture who had left the Lily Saint sect arrived one after another. This sect of all times is too terrifying. So many martial kings and a few Wu Huang were all killed. That guy who seems to be an evil cultivator, his strength must be unfathomable. The 9 patriarch relied on their spiritual senses to capture the battle between the sect of all times and the group of mysterious masked men from afar, especially when they witnessed Evil Saint of Five Ultimates instantly killing 5 Wu Huang. At that moment, they truly realized. The strength of these disciples that Jun Changxiao brought was simply terrifying. If they were to play a life-and-death battle in the Lily Saint sect, the disciples of the various sects in the eastern vast state would definitely not be defeated so easily. Terrifying. The palace master of the Extreme Coldness Palace could not help but secretly say, "It's too terrifying." When Jun Changxiao brought his disciples to kill, it was obvious that he did not send any elites. Otherwise, his sect would have been destroyed long ago. In fact, when he went to the Extreme Coldness Palace to cause trouble, they were all present. It was just that their cultivation was not high at that time, but now they were all martial kings. This sect of all times is not to be trifled with. After witnessing the battle just now, the 9 sects had a new understanding of Jun Changxiao's sect, and an even stronger fear rose in their hearts.